Miles Turner! Yeah!
John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, get started. NBA season officially starts later on tonight. Tomorrow night for the Pacers. JJ is going to join us in the 4 o'clock hour. We'll help get you ready for that. I'm incredibly excited. However, the schlep rock type of attitude that I normally bring, it would stand to reason that maybe I should chill just a little bit, because normally when I get really excited about something, hey, I can't wait to watch this. Hey, I can't wait to do that. This is going to be absolutely incredible. And I'm counting the minutes, counting the seconds until it happens. Oftentimes, it turns into a lump of crap. Seriously, I don't know why that is with me. So I have been advised by many of you Pacer fans out there to maybe just back away a tad. I can't get off the 45 prediction. I'm already there. And listen, that is going to be a wide jump. 25 to 35. Can you imagine how many teams in the past you think have improved over a 3-year period, or a 3-season period, if you will? 10 by 10 by 10. Actually be a 2-year, I guess, in this case. I expect a 10-game jump. That is a lot. A lot of even teams. Should be some good hoop. I'm glad that it's back. They'll celebrate in Denver coming up later on tonight. Hey, by the way, too, if you're a Hoosier fan or if you're a Southsider, Trace Jackson Davis, I don't think Draymond Green is playing when the Suns and Golden State participate this evening for the first time. So I'm assuming that Trace is going to get some minutes. If you watched in the preseason, that last preseason game I watched, it was last week when they were the Warriors playing the Kings, and he got a lot of time out there. That is worth your time and your efforts coming up later on tonight. But again, Pacers underway with the Washington Wizards coming up tomorrow night. And again, with my 45 here, on record with my 45. They need to take advantage of a lot of home games early. I know everybody says, hey, October, November, it doesn't matter. This season really doesn't get going until the Christmas holiday or the turn of the calendar into the new year. I can't wait that long. Got to get to winning, and you got to get to winning early. Take advantage of the home games. That is the hope right there. I heard from a lot of you, and I don't mind you. I heard from a lot of you that, much like me, you are steadfast in your belief that Shane Steichen is as good as we've seen around here, especially from an offensive side of things, and is an absolute breath of fresh air compared to a couple of coaches we've seen in the past. Most of you agree with that. But I will say this, and I'll often tell you when people say, hey, you know what, yesterday you were talking about this, and maybe you weren't hardcore enough about this. Maybe you were not as critical as you needed to be about that. And it's all differing opinions. I mean, you guys probably think, for the most part, I'm full of crap. Like, I get people all the time saying, you were so hard on the Colts, and you're never hard on the Pacers. And I said, well, last year the Pacers said, you know what, we're probably going to suck. And if we do, don't be surprised, but don't be down. That's kind of the bar in which I sit every day. I go, you know what, I'm probably going to suck. But go ahead and tune in anyway. You know, follow me around anyway. I love having you. So they advertised low and ended up delivering and entertaining to a much higher basis. But I kind of get what you're talking about. I was not as hardcore as others regarding the handling, the Shane Steichen handling of the end of the first half. And I know that was costly, and I know you could put all this together in a pot and stir it up, and that could be as important. And the reason why that team lost as the last lack of defensive stand against P.J. Walker or the penalties or any of that stuff. I mean, any of it. But as I mentioned yesterday, and this is full disclosure, now he's not going to wow you with his words. I mean, you're not going to go, oh, man, there's a new saying right there. He's going to offensively try to outwit you. And coaching-wise, as you've seen, especially with an offensive lean here, he's going to try to outsmart you. And I mentioned yesterday that I do have a bit of a blind spot for that. And who do you have to thank? You have to thank the coaches of the past. You have to thank the coaches where at one point maybe you had a lot of thought of positive in mind that they were going to get the job done right. Good coaches all the way around, whatever. Those thoughts faded. I mean, faded in absolute oblivion to the point where you couldn't even recognize them anymore. And this, to me, offensively especially, has been a breath of fresh air. So when I brought this up yesterday, I did mention, hey, I have a little bit of a blind spot here. Yeah, I know how big the end of the first half was. And I jumped on, the officiating a little bit. Yeah, I don't care, but it was costly. I mean, it really did. It cost him the game. And I know that other people suggest that defensive contact that was deemed illegal in that second-to-last flag, that was the more accurate, but I completely disagree. I just think if people are going to tell us on a daily basis when talking about football, there are so many different ways you can win and lose and give me that old cliched margin of error here and there, then I think all this other stuff counts too. If I think a bad decision with your quarterback, which it was a couple of different times at the end of the first half, can lead you into the second half and then be described as the reason why you lost, then I can sit here and make fun of a BS flag being thrown. Yeah, especially when you were basically getting ready to run off the field in celebration. Oh, by the way, there's the flag. There's a flag on the field. But I'll be honest with you, I have been impressed with the operation offensively. And I've been impressed to the point to where hopefully one of these days it helps me and us all forget what we have been through. And I mention this all the time. I think that there's been so much losing going on around here. True story. So much losing that you almost forget what it's like to consistently win. There was a point in time when it was a foregone conclusion. You didn't worry about winning 12-plus games. All right, let's look at the schedule. It didn't matter. Every season, I have to tell you, I've eyeballed the schedule, and on paper, this looks really easy or easier, or do the numbers. It is the fifth easiest in the NFL. You didn't worry about that back then. You just said, hey, you got to get further in the postseason, but this team's going to go out there and wow you with numbers. Remember those days where you could just kind of sit back and cross your arms and wait for a big play? Where the big play was going to be made, the big throw was going to happen. You were going to see that catch. That's all you did was sit there and wait because you knew it was coming. And far too many times over recent history around here, especially with the last two coaching regimes, it hadn't been like that. What do? What have you ended up doing? You ended up sitting back and wondering, when are they going to blank it up? When is this thing going to be blanked up beyond all recognition? Seriously. And I think what that's done, it's clouded your vision, and I understand. I think that's one of the reasons why all the time I have to bat back in your face the whole entertaining losses strategy you've had, because you've been sitting on that forever. Forever. I just think that's where you are right now. And I think Shane Steichen has a good offensive mind to help get you back to a point to where you expect what we used to. Back when this whole process was enjoyable. That's my thought. That's where I am with it. And I think you're really going to see it when hopefully they add the type of players that he wants. I mean, offensively, I was still I was still thrilled in the way this offense played on Sunday, and it's weird because you also have to look at it thinking, you know what, they also did themselves in. And I do understand that. But I didn't explain this yesterday, but that is my blind spot. It's what it hasn't been, what I want to be again, and the looks of at least an offensive mind that can help get it back if things go right. And that starts, obviously, with the health and the extended health period, the consistency on the field of a 21-year-old quarterback upon getting back here. But I do think it's twofold here. A little bit caught up I get in that because I like Steichen. Yeah, I had him on once, and it's like 5-word answers, and that's great. But really, the only thing that matters is what he does out there. And to me, starting with this offense, and then that next step is for him to really kind of soak it in as a coach. I do think he'll do that too. Like everybody else wants to blame that on management, and that's okay. I kind of blame that on, hey, I'm going to outsmart you, so you think we're going to do this right here? Well, here's what I'm going to do to throw you a curveball. And obviously, that didn't work. That was a mishap. But a great deal of good feel in what ultimately can occur around here with him as head coach. So a lot of you had asked me about that, and I thought, you know what, I don't think yesterday I went into full detail on it. And that was it. But I will also point the finger at you thinking all the time, hey, how many more years do you got to lose before you think the time is right to turn things around and start winning? I think you get a little bit clouded. Maybe you have a blind spot there, too. And that blind spot was created by just the consistent losing. And believe me, I've mentioned this over and over again around here. You can hardly get away from it. That's why I really want to see this Pacer team be ahead of what people thought and to, turn the type of corner that I expect them to turn this year. I'm not suggesting being a top 4. I don't know what 45 games would give you. I don't have a really good feel for the East. And again, I may be way too far ahead. But last year was the time with this Pacer team where you sat back and you just knew because you were told, you heard it right here. This is what you're going to get. It may be ugly, but hang with us. We're doing this for the betterment. We're doing this for the good of the organization and the team and you as the fans. And we're going to make this thing into a winner. I want to see those baby steps start to get a little bit longer in length. Yeah, this season. And again, it's tough because you don't know the mix. So you get an interesting mix of guys you saw a year ago, and then you kind of wonder, all right, Obi Toppin comes in, and he looks like an absolute breath of fresh air offensively so far, and certainly athleticism-wise. And then you kind of get to wonder, all right, so New York had no place for this guy. This guy played in like mop-up minutes. This guy played in games late in the season and did in the Pacers a couple of different times with 30-plus games. You wonder how that's going to work out. I mean, maybe the restraints are off now. You play for Tom Thibodeau, and, you're one of my friends, and our friends, I would say, Dylan Windler, who has struggled with injuries over the early portions of his NBA career, actually over the weekend made that Knicks team. And my first thought was, man, first, have that consistent health. But second, it'd be great if you get in there and find yourself a niche. Because Thibodeau is one of those types of guys that seems like that he will give clock. He will give minutes to guys that fill a void or a niche for him. Whatever that may be. If it's guarding somebody, if it's just waiting for your chance and stroking a 3. Seems like that's what he waits on, which also makes you wonder why you couldn't legitimately ever find anything from Obi Toppin. I wonder, too. You kind of wonder if Obi Toppin comes here and you see the style in which they're playing. They're going to get up and down the floor. And you have Tyrese Halliburton, who's going to spread the wealth out there like I mentioned, it almost feels like maybe with this guy, you are going to get a player with the restraints coming off now. All right, with this type of team and this type of up and down, this is what you can get. This is what he can do. When you understand Bruce Brown comes in here now with that championship pedigree, being able to play both sides of the floor, adding a little perimeter defense, of which this team had really 0 to none. But as I've mentioned before, I don't think they're going to improve defensively, especially on the perimeter, as much as my belief is you want to make sure you maintain your offensive ability. And let's face it, this offense should be better with this group this season. If nothing else, at least maintain, but should be better. You don't want to see just a little bit of an improvement defensively and have that take away from a lot of the offense in which we saw a year ago. I mean, I just want to make sure those things stay balanced. I want them to get better defensively. You have to. But you don't want that at the expense of an offensive slowdown of any kind. So my expectation this season is entertaining wins. Entertaining wins. And then we'll finally put to bed the whole entertaining losses crap. Entertaining wins. Some of you are still sitting out there waiting for another lottery pick. And my clock is ticking. So I want to go out there and see a team compete every single night, be fun to watch, and then get the winning result. That comes with, once again, a successful organization and a successful team. That is what I am looking for this season. Good comparison right there between the two professional teams in this market. If you guys want to chime in, free for all at 239-1070. The email address is jmv1075thefan.com. Inside the lounge, the Win Schuler Spreadable Cheeses Lounge. I just got a tweet a little bit earlier. Make sure I give this the propers here. This came from Gregory LC. I've checked every week and suggested every week, 5 weeks, in fact, at the Oleo Road Kroger and Fishers carry Win Schuler Spreadable Cheese. They care not, JMV. Make a call. This is me being mad about no Win Schuler in the case. Love the show. Shout out to Gregory LC. I'll see what I can do up there at Oleo Road. What is that, Geist? Is Oleo the Geist location up there? Let's get going. I will tell you this. Those of you that are looking for the Win Schulers out there, and you know how much I love Kroger, even though they don't stink and advertise, which is ridiculous. But even though I love Kroger, mostly people tell me you find them in bulk at Meijer locations. And I don't know if there's some Michigan connection going on here. I've said before, there's like one good thing that comes out of Michigan. And now there may be two. Win Schuler Spreadable Cheeses in Meijer. So check out those spots too. But Win Schuler Spreadable Cheese, the official sponsor of the lounge via YouTube Live and the Ride with JMV. Guys, go ahead and jump in if you want to recapture any of the thoughts that maybe you missed on yesterday, we didn't talk about yesterday. We can certainly do that. You know, I mentioned this to Jake, and I know a lot of you probably aren't on board, but I have been pleasantly surprised in watching these two league championship series. Because, frankly, I didn't watch a lot of the Texas Rangers during the regular season, didn't watch a lot of the Arizona Diamondbacks during the regular season. But, man, have they brought, along with Houston and Philadelphia in yet another Game 7 tonight, a great deal of compelling circumstances in this postseason. I have been on board. It has been fun to watch, and I thought my old ass, remember at the start of the baseball season, Tucker Barnhart's listening right now, and Tucker can remember when this pitch clock, what are we doing here? Sounded like somebody's great-great-great-grandpa. Well, when we played, we could take as long as we wanted. Well, when we played, we went out and made a bat out of a tree that was struck by lightning. That's exactly how I sounded. But once I watched, during the regular season, I thought it made the viewing experience better. How about that? A little change of heart. And then I think especially during this postseason, it's like magnified. It just seems like the games are going. I mean, it's not like an up and down the floor NBA game or up and down the field NFL game. But for the game of baseball, I think it does get you in a better, man, I'm not going to twiddle my thumbs and wait on this. I have really liked it in this postseason. Get another Game 7 later on tonight. In fact, that's joined in progress with the Diamondbacks and the Phillies. See, I'm not that big of a Diamondbacks fan. I really don't care about either one here, but don't you think Philadelphia's just had too much? Has Philadelphia had too much, or the injuries, the expectations, James Harden, has that kind of brought them back in Philadelphia to where, yeah, maybe they are owed a little bit more, not winning the Super Bowl? Are they owed a little bit more? It kind of seems like everything is just really nice in Philadelphia right now. Isn't it too nice? I mean, don't we have to crap on that team that's been having a lot of success with its professional teams, especially if we're from around here and we have not, and we're jealous? See, those are the days right there. Those are the days to get back to when other fan bases are jealous because you are here and a fan of these teams. Nobody's been jealous around, or I should say, nobody's been jealous around the nation of us and our teams in a while. Oh, man, there's another Manning commercial. Oh, cut that meat. I don't want to see that again. I'm sick and tired of that guy. I hope he throws 5 interceptions. That's when you know we're back. That's when we're going to be back. 5 interceptions. Like that night in San Diego, remember he threw like 6 interceptions and 7 touchdowns? I think that was the Liz Frank, Dwight Freeney injury night. That rainy night in San Diego. Yeah, because we were introduced to wide receiving legends, Devin Aramashadu and Crap Thorpe. Seriously, his name was Crap Thorpe, which I seriously thought about naming one of my kids. It's Crefonzo, but it was Crap Thorpe, out of Florida State, I believe. I would have gone with Crap for short. Just call me Crap. But yeah, we got to get the people outside of this area to start being jealous of this squad again. Man, Bowen just jacks with this microphone thing up here. You know that, right? Look at that thing. I got to get in here and fix it like I'm Bob Vila. I'm going to be twisting that tight. Hey, all right, 239-1070. Week number 2 for some and week number 1 for some. High school football Friday night postseason. Greg Rakestraw is going to have that for us, too. Also, maybe a little bit of a look regarding college basketball about to get underway. I've got to get a look-see around, too. I got to get Dusty back on the show. Was there any truth to that? And I don't know if this matters or not. Like, I saw this the other day. Carolina in a very secret scrimmage blew out Florida Atlantic. Very secret scrimmage. I thought certain I saw it. Was this made up? Because I hope it wasn't. Because as much as I like Kentucky roads and the spots in which they have where you can stop and encounter indoor plumbing, I like that. Bojangles they have and some Kentucky locations. I dig that. But I don't like the basketball teams. Was that true? Chicago State big in a scrimmage over Kentucky, or is that made up?
Over Kentucky? Or I thought we were talking about Florida Atlantic.
No, I'm just all over the joint here, man.
Okay.
I left you to the last block right there. No, Florida Atlantic, I think, lost in a super secret scrimmage to North Carolina.
That's what I'm seeing here. That's what I looked up.
No, look up Kentucky and Chicago State because people were joking about that. And if that's true, I kind of want to jump on the bandwagon and joke about that too. That's all right. See anything?
Not off the top. Not off the
This has got to be
page.
false then. I will say this, because I know the kid from Linton is playing for Kentucky, I do have to give them a little bit of love this year because I'm a friend, long time. I've known Joey Hart, his dad, for a long time. And his son, Joey, is a freshman at Kentucky. So that will change my mind a little bit. You can always get me at local interest. I want the local folks to do well no matter what their situation might be. And if it's a freshman from Greene County, even though it's on the other side of the river, I don't trust anybody over there on the other side of the river. But even though it's on the other side of the river in Greene County, and I know I've known Joey forever, and I hope that his son has a great career down in Lexington. So local interest can always get me. All right, quick break. We shall return. Greg Rakestraw, as I mentioned, bottom of the hour, a lot of stuff to talk about with him. Brad Spielberger, 4 o'clock of PFF. JJ's back from Bally Sports, Indiana. A little Pacers conversation coming up in 4:30. And, Nate Atkins had that story regarding Michael Pittman Jr. And I want to get his thoughts on, you won't find out until tomorrow or on Thursday when he is back with the media, but how much of that was a mixture here of 75-yard touchdown run bravado, and we just lost to a team on a final drive led by P.J. Walker, when actually Mark Hamill playing Luke Skywalker is probably right now a better quarterback. And where this team presently is. We'll find that out from Nate coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Bullseye Event Center passes, too, coming up on Sunday. You got to listen to win. The stream, the app, HD radio, inside the lounge, and 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
If somebody gets in your face and calls you a I want you to be nice.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Got bullseye passes to give away every hour so you can listen to win. Brad Spielberger of Pro Football Focus will crunch some numbers. Jeremiah Johnson's going to be here at 4:30. Nate Atkins regarding Michael Pittman Jr. and the reaction the other day. I still say that they're going to pay him. I think he's going to be back here. And I'm fine with him being back here, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you have to go out in some form or fashion and upgrade even more. And I know you get sick and tired of me talking about this, but too bad. That is the case. And if you don't believe it, just ask me. Get back to that in a second, too. Nate Atkins of the Star coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. This time of year, the schedule is pretty packed. Greg Rakestraw joins us. Where are you going this weekend?
Ben Davis in Brownsburg on Friday night.
Nice.
Couple of soccer state finals on Saturday, and then hanging with you on Sunday.
You will get at least one side from Friday night saying, why in the world did this game happen early on in this tournament? One of the sides will be shouting that from the top of the bleachers.
What I would say is this, is that it's a little bit different when you're trying to seed a sectional that has 7 or 8 teams, or even basketball with 6, versus a sectional with 4. You know, you've got a 1 in 3 chance, and Ben Davis and Brownsburg now play each other back-to-back years in the opening round of the tournament. And so, you know, I think if there's going to be change, it probably has to come from the IFCA, the Coaches Association, really pushing on the IHSA to say, okay, if we're going to seed this, do you want to seed this for, say, classes 1A through 4A that have, 7 or 8 team sectionals, and do you do this differently in 5A and 6A? Do you open it up where if you want to seed it, you have to travel a bit further? Are schools willing to trade seating for tacking on a few miles on bus trips? So I think those are the hurdles that have to be cleared before we get to seeding in terms of football.
Greg, do we have any other games of that magnitude that also could be used as an argument when the game's over?
Bloomington South and Bloomington North, the exact same rankings in 5A. And again, you've got a 4-team sectional, so you got a much better chance of drawing each other in the opening game. Once you get to 1 through 4A, you've got big matchups like Guerin and Chittard, but those two teams had to win to get to see each other, and there is still another undefeated team in the other half of that sectional in terms of Hamilton Heights. So it's those two games in 5A and 6A that will draw the most attention.
Hey, Greg, how are the drawings held? Do you know? How do they do that?
Basically, you assign there's ping pong balls. You assign a number to each school, and you would say, all right, 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3. And that's how it's done. So there is the ping pong ball that is in the studio where we film, we as in the IHSA, where we film all of the pairing shows, and those get drawn out, and that's how it happens.
Like you guys do beer pong or something like that in there?
Something along those lines occasionally. We don't record that part of it, John.
One of the greatest things ever, and I don't know if this has stood the test of time. You may have gotten that type of storyline and treatment in Southern Indiana, too, at Lanesville. But one of the best things would always joke about how one specific team in your sectional would always get over with the bye, and everybody else felt they were getting screwed. I always thought that added to the legend and the great conversation that was basketball or even football in this case.
Well, again, for those that want seeding, I understand the argument. I'm not so sure I disagree with you, okay? The counterpoint would be the school that has had a rough year, that now, because everybody gets in, and I do think it's important that everybody gets in, that has helped grow this sport over the last 40 years since that decision was made back in 1985. I'll give you a local example. Okay, it's been kind of rough years for Avon and Pike. Now, Avon has played better over the course of the last couple of weeks of the season. They've got some momentum heading in, but I guarantee you the outlook has been different for each of those two teams because they drew each other and said, hey, we had a chance to win and make a sectional championship. And so for that team that does get the benefit of the draw, they've got a little something more, to look forward to. And again, if we're going to have the seeding debate, Ben Davis and Brownsburg will get a vote. And so too will Avon and Pike. And so I'm very curious to see if the entire populace of the IHSAA says at some point in time, whether it's now, 5 years from now, a decade from now, or long after we're gone, if everybody says, all right, let's seed this, because, again, there's some years it's going to benefit you, and there's some years that it's not, and would you get a majority of schools to say, let's go for seeding? I'm not sure that would be the case.
He is a Greg Rakestraw on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Another Friday night of playoff football is on the way. Fishers and Hamilton Southeastern in Sectional 3 matched up with a couple of Fort Wayne area schools. Is this a collision course, or would Northrop and or Homestead be legitimate contenders, or maybe even a favorite in one case?
Not this year. No, it's Fishers and HSC. Northrop is kind of the third of the 6As in the Fort Wayne area. Carroll would be the other. That would be up there. Carroll and HSC played each other in the semi-state game last year. A lot of folks at HSC was going to make it, and Carroll kind of surprised them to make the state championship game. And just because of the way the numbers work, Carroll gets shoved towards South Bend just because there's so many fewer 6A schools in Fort Wayne and South Bend that they kind of get sent north. Or west in this case. But no, the team outside of the Indy area, and there frankly are so few of them now that play 6A. The one that's probably set to make the deepest run is Crown Point. Being in the Duneland Conference, they play a lot of really good 5A schools. There's not much in the way of 6A competition up there for them. Penn is good, but maybe not what they were 5, 10, 15 years ago at this point. So, no, I would think you're looking at a Mudsock rematch in the championship game next Friday night.
Hey, Greg, you and I talked about this last week, and I also furthered that conversation with Bob Lovell last Friday. It seems like Greenfield Central's having a sports renaissance going on right now with high-level play and high-level talent. But you get New Pal coming up at 7 o'clock on Sectional 22 on Friday night. And granted, New Pal's not the New Pal of the past, but legit, no doubt about that.
Well, New Pal is still 7-0 against their conference, and including Greenfield Central. I want to say that game was week number 5, week number 6. I'm not sure which one it was. What I do know is that it was 21-14, and it was 14-14 in the fourth quarter of that game, and New Pal scored late. And so the kids from Greenfield Central are talented. Obviously, that's the game that I had last week. They ran for 360 yards against a good but a bit of a beaten-up Pendleton Heights team. Greenfield Central will not lack for motivation in that game against New Pal. I can tell you that. Sometimes when you are trying to overturn a decade of dominance like New Pal has had against everybody in that league, you're kind of playing against history. You're almost kind of playing against shadows at times. And if Greenfield can get off to a good start, I think that's paramount for that game at New Pal. It will not be easy, but it is possible for Greenfield Central to pull the upset on Friday night.
How bad is this football season been collegiately in the state of Indiana? And Notre Dame, I guess, notwithstanding, but when you look all the way around, it's not been much to write home about.
The good thing is I get to deal in the world of small college football, and so life's pretty good. Marion hasn't lost. UIndy hasn't lost. I literally was over at Wabash. We're 2.5 weeks away from the Monon Bell game on the ISC Sports Network, so Wabash has had a good year. DePaul hasn't lost a game yet. Rose-Hulman could win their league in the HCAC, but your point is well made in terms of the schools that typically people are tracking. And we know how bad it's been at Indiana. We kind of thought it might be a bit of a step back in Ryan Walters' first year at Purdue. It has been. Ball State just got their first FBS win last weekend. Obviously, your trees are battling, man. They're not your typical winless team. They just have an absolutely brutal schedule. I mean, they hung with the number 6 team in FCS football. It was a 7-point game with 5 minutes left to go. Just couldn't generate enough offense because they had to use 4 different quarterbacks because of injuries at times this year. But at the FBS and FCS level, the best way to describe the football season is the basketball season is about to tip off. That's the best way to describe the football season.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Sycamore basketball team. Josh Schertz this season. What do you think they're capable of? I think 4th in the Missouri Valley from what I've seen preseason-wise.
Right. Obviously, you're flipping a lot of guards, and it's much easier to flip a roster in the transfer portal. Josh Schertz is very well thought of in the coaching community. When you hear a coach say he runs a lot of good stuff, and I hear that from coaches about him, and I've seen it with my own eyes. The biggest recruiting win that they had this year is they kept Robbie Avila, the 6'10" big kid that wears the specs. He really has some potential. And that is now the issue that you fight at that level. Think about Peyton Sparks at Ball State. Had a really good couple of years, now playing at Indiana University. And so you almost feel the need. You have to, like, re-recruit your own kids every year. Avila stuck around for at least one more year. That's a big thing. It'll be tough to replace some of the scoring and the guard play they had last year, even if they're going to have a true point guard. Cooper Neese kind of played that role. It's really not what he's best suited for, but he did it and did a great job with it. So they've got some turnover to deal with in Indiana State, but knowing they kept their best big man, I think that gives them a chance to have a very successful season for Coach Schertz and Terre Haute.
Yeah. And, no more Courvoisier either, so.
You could no longer pass it to Courvoisier, as I tried to work into
what a great name.
Radio and television calls as best I could.
But did he go anywhere to play overseas?
I'm assuming so, but I don't know for sure.
Huh.
So I can't tell you that.
Manual kid, right? Was he not?
Correct. Played at Manual and went to Lincoln Memorial, and that's where he and Coach first ran across each other. Then he transferred up to DePaul in the Big East and probably found what his level was in the Missouri Valley Conference.
All right. Friday night, all this weekend, you're busy, right?
I am busy. It is that time of year. You accurately depicted it. It's the crossover season. Like, literally, I've got my first basketball game a week from Monday. So the busy time is here, my friend, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
All right. I don't know. Does that mean the Saturday night phone calls are going to be few and far between?
No, believe it or not, I've got 2 afternoon games on Saturday, so I'll be calling you relatively early on the show. And instead of making some sort of joke about the factory, at least having to go back to it, my shift will be over. So I may have Amy call you, and I may have her designated driver. I might be half blitz when I call you on the show on Saturday.
We've got
I do have a Halloween theme song picked out for you.
Well, it's the Sammy Terry Halloween party we have coming up on Saturday night, too. The annual Sammy Terry Halloween party. He actually called in 2 weeks ago on his way home from Columbus.
Not the original one, right? The current one. Because if the original one called in,
right.
A little more newsworthy.
No, it is the sequel, and the sequel's doing a hell of a job.
It is Son of Sammy, correct?
Yes, correct.
Is that the way that works now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, holding up the legacy and holding it up strong is what's happening there.
So I do have, again, I'm not trying to tip my hand because I know how people hear this conversation on Tuesdays and like marking their calendar. Well, I'm going to call in on Saturday. That's how big of a deal it is. That's full on sarcasm, folks. Hope you can detect that. But I do have a game plan already for when I call the show on Saturday night.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that too. Hey, by the way, before I let you go, did you get a lot of blaming the officials' calls in the post-game show on Sunday?
I did, and I'll be honest with you, John. I led and said this. I've been doing this for 12 years now. That's probably the most direct impact from a call or two at the end of the game that I have ever had to deal with on the postgame show. Now, I was quick to say, listen, if the Colts hang on to the football a bit better, if they handle the last 3 or 4 minutes of the second quarter better, we're not having this conversation. But it is still fair to say that a couple of bad whistles potentially took that game away from the Indianapolis Colts. So we probably talked more or pointed more towards officiating on that show than any of the ones I had done in the last 11 and a half years.
Yeah, they did. They had that one. I'm sorry. The worst one was the one that actually cost them the game, and that was the illegal contact one. So
Right. Because obviously the game's over at that point.
Over.
And that's a timing call. But I actually thought the worst call was the second one. And even if you're going to call, say, holding and not pass interference, now you're putting the ball down at the 3 or 4 yard line versus the 1.
Yep.
And that's an entirely different series of plays. And given after that misfit on the run on the first drive and the way that the Browns were running the ball after that point in time, I'm not sure the Browns are scoring from the 3 or 4 yard line with 4 plays left to go with one timeout.
Well, they barely crossed the plane where they were.
Right.
So
right. He literally got half the ball on the goal line. That was it. So both those calls were, I thought, bad. The second one was egregiously so.
Greg Rakestraw's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, buddy.
That's Greg Rakestraw via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Spielberger is going to be here in the 4 o'clock hour. PFF JJ, Nate Atkins, all on the way. Your chance coming up in about 10 minutes to win Bullseye Event Center passes. I heard great things. I was actually there before the doors opened on Sunday. But I heard great things about the time, the enjoyment all the winners had from this show last week. We'll give you a chance to do it, too, prior to the Saints game coming up on Sunday, too. Hey, tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday, road events in which I would love to see you out with me. We'll tell you when and where and why. Coming up next. Me and you at 239-1070 as well, 93.5 106.
You gonna stare all day, or you gonna buy something?
I'm gonna stare all day.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Greg Rakestraw a little bit earlier, the podcast, 1075thefan.com. Brad Spielberger of PFF will land on this show as usual, Tuesdays at 4 o'clock. Jeremiah Johnson makes his triumphant return. We're going to talk up Pacers-Wizards and Pacers season stuff coming up at 4:30. Nate Atkins regarding Michael Pittman Jr. To me, the guy went 75 yards, did deuces, was feeling it, disappointed his team, gagged one up late against P.J. Walker, mad about everything, going, hey, I got 5 targets, why? And I just said yesterday, just, make yourself prevalently more open, I guess. But we'll find out if that was more, in the great words of local artist After 7, and also an 80s song from the supergroup Asia. We'll see if it's more heat of the moment. Nate Atkins to the Star coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. JMV, you're right about Steichen averaging 25 points per game with the personnel that they have is incredible. Steichen will prove to be one of the better coaches we'll ever have. Offensively, certainly I have my belief here. There's no doubt about it. I have been pleasantly surprised so far, and I was really impressed by Sunday. I love it when coaches are viewed as giving the other team something that they don't look prepared for or ready for or didn't expect. Absolutely love that aspect. Now, I don't love this particular tweet right here. I do like Ray Love a great deal. Ray Love says, all right, NBA season is back, which means we have to hear JMV defend Myles Turner all year. Let me tell you this, Ray Love. I didn't have to defend him 1 ounce. He defended himself last year by his play. I no longer have to defend myself because in all the Myles Turner battles I've had to have around here, I am victorious. I am the winner. I have won this. Tip your cap to me because I'm the winner. Now, I will tell you this. I kind of wonder how the new weapons and how the balls being spread around on this team might end up going, offensively speaking. But now I won. It was hugely understandable how important he is. And let me tell you this, everybody's out there, and rightly so, in love with Tyrese Halliburton. All you have to do is ask Tyrese Halliburton how much he loves playing with him. Thank you. There will be no parting gift for you losing. Big winner right here. Big winner. And I always feel good about that, too, because everybody else out there, there's nobody with, like, one person was with me. Like a duo right here. That was it. Nah, but seriously, I did nothing. I was no basketball, know what to expect, and understood how important he was going to be to this whole thing, which he has been and he will be. Thank you very much, Ray Love. All right, quick break and we shall return. If you're on hold, I'll get to you. Got a busy show for you tomorrow. Harrah's Park Racing and Casino in Anderson. Tell you all about that. Tomorrow's show in Anderson at Harrah's Park. I'm going to stop by Ford's Garage, too, and I think check out the burger. I got a burger on the menu. So we'll stop there at noon. If you guys want to join me out there at noon at Ford's Garage in Noblesville, you can. And then, we'll also all go up to Harrah's Park after that, too. That's coming up tomorrow on this show, Harrah's Park Racing and Casino in Anderson. Quick break, we'll come back. PFF numbers and more. Brad Spielberger joins us next.
The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
You are more reptile than man, George. So low and flat that the foot of man is incapable of crushing you. How dare you?
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Rakestraw earlier, podcast 1075thefan.com. What did Michael Pittman Jr. mean on Sunday after that loss to the Browns? Nate Atkins was the guy that reported the story, wrote the story. We've got him in the 5 o'clock hour. JJ, Pacers Wizards open up the season coming up tomorrow night. NBA opens up the season with a double dip coming up later on this evening. That and more. And by the way, too, we got ourselves a Game 7, man, back-to-back nights with Game 7s. That's pretty awesome. Around here, because the trackside at 7 with Kevin and Kevin, that will be joined in progress. Philly and the Diamondbacks. I believe, what's his nuts here? Mad Dog Russo has suggested that he will retire forever if Philly loses tonight. Did I ever tell you the story about the time he got bit on the face by a spider before Super Bowl 41? Anybody remember the spider story? Spider bite story. Oh, it's a good one.
I think you may have mentioned it to me.
The spider bite Mad Dog Russo story that I have. They remind me of that when we have a little bit of time. Right now, speaking of the New York area and broadcasters from Brooklyn, I believe, is our friend Brad Spielberger, a Pro Football Focus on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Hello, Brad.
Hey, how's it going?
Fantastic. Tell me, in terms of the numbers at PFF, the impression that you guys had on the Colts offense against what was, prior to Sunday, that vaunted, stingy Browns defense.
Yeah, obviously, outside of a couple of Myles Garrett, freak show type of snaps, he was held in check to a degree by this offensive line. Enough for Gardner Minshew to get the ball out quickly in space. Obviously, a breakout game for Josh Downs, the rookie wide receiver who was making plays all over the field, making players miss in open space. And then you saw Jonathan Taylor, particularly this run defense for the Browns has been historically good to start the season, allowing a success rate of about 25%, so 1 out of 4 rushes were staying on schedule, and they were able to do enough on the ground as well. It was impressive. This has been one of the best units in the league, and the Colts were able to score a whole lot of points. It's
Brad Spielberger, a Pro Football Focus with us. I had mentioned yesterday that I think that the fire is just getting started and stoked with Shane Steichen using Jonathan Taylor. That's the way that it felt with me on Sunday. You too?
Yep, definitely. I think it's only going to ramp up. You obviously want to be patient with that guy. You want to work him in slowly and not, give him too many touches, but I'm sure we're a couple of weeks away from a classic, 25-plus carry type game.
When you mentioned Myles Garrett, a couple of freak plays, I guess we look back on the end of the half there in the end zone and that play call to throw it out of the end zone for Shane Steichen and the offense. And I've been so impressed with Steichen so far, but there is no doubt that is one that he would like to have back, because basically what he did is he invited that freak to come in the front door.
He sure did, which is always a scary proposition. And sometimes you do, there's an element of letting that guy be a free rusher. And as long as the quarterback is hot and knows to get rid of the football and to throw either into the blitz or around where the pressure is coming from, you can kind of use it to your advantage. But, he's also a great athlete in terms of, deflecting passes, taking balls off. He is, like I said, a true freak show. But yeah, sometimes you can't get away with it. That was a scary one, though, no question.
How did besides, a couple of plays from Garrett, how did that Colts offensive line look to the numbers of PFF?
They held up well. Like I said, this is not just a Myles Garrett defensive line. You also have very good players, into Darius Smith, who they traded for this offseason, in Ogbokarankwo, obviously a former AFC South guy down with the Houston Texans, some good players on the interior as well. But, overall for the numbers, the Colts had a bunch of guys grade out pretty well, as purely as pass protectors. I'm still a little bit here. I'm trying to pull up the exact numbers, but from my watching view, the most important thing for me, and it does match the numbers here, is the guard play. Both Quentin Nelson and Will Fries, who's had some up and down games this season, had pass block grades above 75. Both guys only allowed 1 quarterback pressure, and Dalvin Tomlinson and Shelby Harris have wreaked some havoc. So the interior, I think, created a lot of good pockets for Gardner Minshew. You knew the edge rushers would win, the tackles that have some tough reps. Obviously, Freeland stepping in, but the guards played really, really good football, and Ryan Kelly looked good in his return as well.
Hey, Brad, I mentioned this as a further tease in the show later on next hour regarding the words of Michael Pittman Jr. in the locker room after that loss on Sunday. He basically said, and I'm going to paraphrase here, that, I wonder if I'm, part of the offense or whatever. 5 targets. He did have that 75-yard catch and run. One of his 2 receptions on the day for the Colts. Does he have a point, or is it one of those things where you go, well, if you wanted more, maybe you should create more of an open window for yourself out there? Which side of that are you guys on, according to PFF?
Yeah, in this matchup, I think you got to be cognizant of who you're playing against. He drew a lot of coverage snaps from Denzel Ward, who is our highest-graded corner in single coverage, who's allowed the lowest completion percentage, or one of the lower completion percentages in single coverage, and one of the lowest yards per coverage snap allowed when lined up as a single coverage player over a top receiver. So, I mean, look, he's one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. There's a reason he's a top 5 paid guy at that position. When healthy, he is the definition of a lockdown number 1 corner. And we've talked a lot about Michael Pittman. I think he's a good player. He's not going to win those type of matchups against those elite outside corners, big physical guys that can match his size. That's just not a good matchup for him.
Was that just in terms of this Colts offense, whether it's Shane Steichen or even Gardner Minshew, was that just going to the better matchup across the board for you offensively?
Yes, in my opinion, I think that's what it was more about. I like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Anthony Walker for this Browns team at linebacker, but I think you can't pick on them more so than their outside corners. And in Ward, as I mentioned, Greg Newsom's a good player. Martin Emerson's a good player. Those 2 guys kind of fluctuate between the slot and out wide. But, yeah, I think throwing over the middle and targeting Josh Downs. Also, of course, a guy that can create separation quickly. The back shoulder stuff or the jump ball stuff or the, even in breakers, stuff like Michael Pittman, he's not a guy that gets open quickly. And Gardner Minshew knew he was facing this defensive line. I think Josh Downs having a big game made a whole lot of sense. It's hard for me to doubt anything Shane Steichen is doing right now.
From what you've seen from the rookie, Josh Downs, 125 through the air on 5 receptions, targeted 6 times on Sunday. What type of ceiling does he have?
I think he is a guy you still do need to create, free releases for. He's not going to be able to get off against press a lot of the time, which you did see some of that in this Cleveland game. They're willing to do that. So it was great that he had, those 5 monster catches and a touchdown. Look, he at the end of the day, he's 5'9", 175 pounds, whatever it is. There's plenty of productive players in that mold, but it limits to a degree, what you're able to do. But I think that is where, a Shane Steichen stepping in can do so much to get him room, make sure no one's bumping him at the line and getting him off his route stem, with sacks and bunches and various ways to create free releases for him, because if he does get off the line, good luck keeping up with him. He is as shifty as anyone in the league right now.
So Brad Spielberger of Pro Football Focus with us via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I do want to look on the other side of things. Cleveland, that 39-38 win. But what type of issues, I think we know the issues they have at quarterback right now, but what have we now unearthed regarding Deshaun Watson that is absolutely frightening for the longer-term future for this football team?
Yeah, it is the scariest thing going. Obviously this massive investment with all fully guaranteed money for the next several years. I want to say this year and 3 more. I mean, he's playing like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, and we have enough of a sample now. 6 games last year, 4 starts now this season. He was terrible. I mean, the first interception was just a terrible throw. The second one, yes, he took a big shot, but even regardless, if he didn't, guys bearing down on him had pressure, but it's not like his arm was hit or anything, and it was 5 yards short of his receiver right into the defender's hands. He looks terrible. I mean, I know he's injured, and the throwing shoulder is obviously not an ideal injury for any quarterback to have. But I don't know. I almost wonder if they put him on an IR to protect him, protect his confidence, protect his body, what have you. He looks, really, really bad. Jacoby Brissett was better last year in Cleveland than the current version of Deshaun Watson that we're looking at.
Brad Spielberger of Pro Football Focus with us via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. What's going on with Brock Purdy and the Niners?
I think you're really just seeing the regression in some areas that should have been expected. So, all these comments last night, Brock Purdy never puts the ball in danger. It's such a shock he had interceptions. That's why we track things like turnover-worthy plays at PFF. He was 4th in the NFL for us in turnover-worthy throws. So far this season, he just got so lucky with a lot of dropped interceptions. I mean, there was a game where George Kittle basically had a pass breakup and did like a defensive back celebration as a joke. No, he's not very good, and everyone falls in love with the stats and falls in love with the numbers. Here's a perfect stat that illustrates Kyle Shanahan and how incredible he is. With all these quarterbacks he's had, last night the Niners were down by 8 points in the fourth quarter. Kyle Shanahan coached teams are now 0-37 when down by 8 points or more in the fourth quarter of a game. And, of course, that's not an easy situation to win in, but the quarterbacks that do win those games are the guys that elevate their offense around them, not guys that are just drivers of the Lamborghini. All that said, he still made a bunch of nice throws last night. First half, he was in rhythm. He was finding Brandon Ayuk. He was finding, Juwan Jennings made some nice throws. But when he's playing in a bad game script, trailing from behind, that's the guy that we expect. He's not a special talent. He's a good game managing quarterback.
Yeah, it looked so, over 2 weeks ago, so perfect. This is how teams would love to be, a managing quarterback and all these weapons. And then with the Browns and with the Vikings, all of a sudden, that's just all caved in a 2-week period.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Minnesota without Justin Jefferson, and that side of the ball, frankly, surprised me a whole lot more. I mean, got to give a huge shout-out to the tackles in Minnesota and Christian Darrisaw on the left side and Brian O'Neill on the right side. It was, for us, one of Nick Bosa's lowest-graded pass rush games in years. Eric Armstead did nothing. Javon Hargrave did nothing. Kirk Cousins had time all day long, had 45 dropbacks, 0 sacks, I think like 10 or 11 pressures total. That was the key. I mean, he's a guy, if he has time, he's going to make nice throws. That side of the ball surprised me a lot more than Brock Purdy against the Minnesota defense. So, look, they lack talent, but credit to Brian Flores. He's blitzing at an insane rate, a historically high rate, and he's getting the most out of his talent. So, credit to him. But, yeah, the Niners defense needs to figure some things out.
Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus. Let's look around the league right here even more. Ravens impressive 38-6. I don't know if they were more impressive or the Lions were more depressing on the road in Baltimore. But we talked about Todd Monken a couple of weeks ago when the Colts were in Baltimore and your impressions on him and the effect he would have on Lamar Jackson. How much are we seeing that? How much of that game did we see that particular effect?
We saw it in every single way. The first half, I mean, they were just dialing up winner after winner. Great route combinations of getting guys open in space over the middle of the field, in an intermediate area of the field. Again, we talked about, Josh Downs. Zay Flowers, also a smaller guy, but they were having him in stacks and bunches with Odell Beckham Jr., with Mark Andrews, getting him space over the middle of the field. And Lamar is our most accurate quarterback over the intermediate 10 to 20 yards downfield. He's our highest graded quarterback 10 to 20 yards downfield. He was evading pressure and making throws on the move. I mean, I think he put himself in the MVP conversation in that game. Look, Jared Goff was bad. The Lions were bad. But to me, that was more impressive by Baltimore and that offense, than it was, the Lions look bad. They will bounce back. I'm just now thinking, Baltimore might be maybe the second best team in the conference right now.
How much of a test was not passed by the Dolphins against a good team on the road on Sunday night in Philly?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I did worry about, we just talked about game script and Brock Purdy and all that. I did worry about Miami in the same fashion because obviously we've seen them pretty much all year long, except for the Buffalo game where they got blown out. Up by a bunch of scores, they can run the ball, Tua can get the ball out quickly, and then when they got down, how can they handle it? And I will say, he obviously had the bad interception in the right corner of the end zone, but a drive that stuck out to me was when they go down 17-3 at the end of the first half. They get a holding penalty, and they're 3rd and 18. And Tua throws a strike to Cedric Wilson, then, throws the touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill. So, I think they actually showed me some good there. No Xavier Howard, no Jalen Ramsey, no 3 starting offensive linemen. I'm not worried about Miami just yet. I think it was just a good team, on the road.
Obviously here we know what happened a little bit after this time of year, and it was Frank Reich being cut loose in the middle of the season and Jeff Saturday taking over on an interim basis. Are we going to get something like that this year? Might it go a Staley angle on this?
I think he'll probably finish out the rest of the season, but I know there was an article in The Athletic about how he's probably losing the locker room. I frankly wouldn't be too surprised if he was. I mean, you're hired as a defensive coach, and their defense is horrendous. And so, and obviously, some of the decision-making in the fourth downs and all that, I think for the most part, it's the correct decisions when he does it. But he also, of course, has some of them where you're scratching your head wondering what in the world he's doing. And we had, Keenan Allen tweet last year, like, what the heck are we doing? I think there probably is some turmoil starting to build there. So I think he finishes the year. I don't think he's back next season.
Yeah, it seems like that they are just in, like a treadmill that you just can't get off, where you're thinking you're going to get there and you just never get there. And this team seems like it has so many weapons, has one of those so-called future elite level quarterbacks. And, both sides of the football, really, those positions that are so coveted, they have covered and just can't do anything with it.
Yeah, and it's just like it's confusing, what they're even really trying to accomplish on defense, particularly in coverage. Like there's games when they play like Miami or a team with a lot of speedsters, and they'll be up in press man coverage. And they'll play games where there's more kind of big body guys, and they'll sit back in soft zone and let teams throw on them. Like it just doesn't even make sense. Like I don't really understand on a week-to-week basis what they really. I don't know what they see, what matchups they're trying to exploit. It's bizarre because I think he was a good coach, at some point. I think he was a great defensive coordinator with the Rams, a good position coach for the Bears back in the day. I know Vic Fangio spoke very highly of him. I just think it's all unraveling at this point, and they're just kind of out of answers.
It's Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Where are they according to answers in Buffalo? Was it a little bit too early for us to jump to conclusions, or have some conclusions been made about this disappointing 4-3 start?
I'm worried about them, for sure. I mean, I think when you lose Matt Milano, one of the best linebackers in football, and you have I think a third-year player and a rookie now playing a lot of the snaps there. You lose Tre'Davious White, so you have a couple second-year corners logging the majority of the snaps, mixed in with some other late-round draft picks. And then your starting safeties are both, in their early 30s, and you're seeing their lack of, athletic ability pop up on tape a bunch. Their defense concerns me. I mean, Mac Jones had one of the best games of his entire career. There was bad weather conditions, some wind in that game, and he still was throwing it all over that defense. Obviously had the 75-yard touchdown drive to win it. I think the offense will figure it out. They'll be okay. Bill Belichick does so well against teams that really only have one, pass catcher, and I still feel that way about Buffalo. I think outside of Stephon Diggs, I'm just not impressed with anybody else on that roster. But defensively, I think they're going to have issues against good offenses all year long.
Well, you mentioned this. You've got an article out or coming out regarding the trade deadline, which is fast approaching. Kevin Byard yesterday, a guy on the back end defensively from the Titans to the Eagles, as certainly the Eagles get better. Might we see the Bills trying to get a little bit better? And I guess to even play off of that, is this the early stages of Tennessee deciding to go ahead and look to the future?
Yeah, I'll start with the Tennessee point. Yes, I think there could be more guys on the move. I think DeAndre Hopkins is an interesting name. I don't know if I buy the Derrick Henry thing. I mean, maybe, but Tennessee would have to rework his contract to get another team, to take on a big, final year of a deal for a 30-year-old running back. But, yeah, DeAndre Hopkins is interesting. Christian Fulton is interesting. I think Danico Autry, their defensive lineman, is interesting. I don't think they're done yet selling. For the Bills, maybe. I mean, maybe they could make a move. I think adding a speed element at wide receiver could be a decent move for them. Maybe a Paris Campbell, your old pal from back in the Colts days, Terrace Marshall in Carolina. And then I guess on defense as well, it's just kind of hard to find corners. Maybe Dante Jackson in Carolina. I mentioned Christian Fulton. So I think a small move for Buffalo, but I don't think they're going to make a splash per se.
I mentioned, and I did like Terrace Marshall. Coming out of LSU years ago, and certainly there's been nothing to show for it in Carolina. Has that been more about him just not being what people like me thought, or more about the offensive environment in which he's been surrounded by at the start of his NFL career?
Yeah, I think the talent is there. I mean, week 4 he had 9 catches, and then week 5 he played 0 offensive snaps. And you look at his entire usage thus far through, 2.5 seasons, and I think he kind of falls out of favor with coaching staffs, and I have no idea why. But that's kind of been the story of his career. It's like when he does play, I mean, last year on deep balls, he was a great option. He really was up there in contested catches, up there in just pure receiving yards on throws 10-plus yards downfield. So he has that athletic ability. I think he's a decent catch-and-run guy as well. You just get the vibe of, they draft Jonathan Mingo, they signed DJ Chark. Like, they're always trying to replace him in the lineup, and you wonder why that is. But the talent's there. I just can't really answer, the second piece.
Could you mine some gold from him with a second chance opportunity at the trade deadline somewhere?
I think you could. I really do. I've been saying the Chargers should consider it, get some more speed now that Mike Williams is out. Maybe the Eagles get a third receiver. Maybe the Jets get some speed element. Now they trade Mecole Hardman away. I do. I think the change of scenery, maybe he resets his focus, gels more with a different coaching staff and front office. I really do think he could have a resurgence in his career. Like I said, whenever he plays, he grades well for us. He puts up good stats. Traditionally, he just doesn't consistently play.
All right, so coming up in week number 8, is this going to be the week where the Bengals step up and start being more like the Bengals than most people expected this season?
I want to say yes, but you got a very angry 49ers
you do.
team now coming
Losers
off.
two
Yeah.
straight. That's probably the worst news for the Bengals. Losers are 2 straight with the Niners.
Absolutely. But it's still, though, you got a team off a bye versus a team that played Monday night. So a pretty massive advantage for Cincinnati there. I don't love the matchup, but interesting thing is this pass rush, we talked about, did not get home at all yesterday. And so that's still Cincinnati's kind of biggest weak spot. And maybe they can mitigate that to a degree. So I do, though. I think they're going to look better. They're going to be able to throw the football. You get a healthy T. Higgins, a healthy Joe Burrow. We'll see if they win. But I think they're going to start playing, the Bengals brand of ball we've gotten used to the last couple of years.
All right, one final thing, too, regarding the Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, getting the win and against New Orleans last week to start the week out on a Thursday night. They are 5-2. How close are they right now? It wasn't a pretty performance by any aspect, but still 5-2 is legit. How close are they right now to where you expected them to be at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I was super high on them. I actually, picked them to have the 1 seed of the AFC. That'll probably be Kansas City. I frankly think I don't know who's going to beat Kansas City if they stay healthy. I think they're just worlds better than everybody else. But I was super high on the Jaguars, and I think we're seeing a lot of it. Their run defense is a top 5 unit across the NFL, and whatever metric you want to look at. Now that the offensive line is settled in with Cam Robinson and Anton Harrison, the first-round rookie at tackle, both playing good ball. I think the one thing holding them back is right now on scripted drives, which is the first 15 plays of a game, they are top 5 in the NFL in drive conversion rate into points, in EPA per play, all these various metrics. Outside of that script, they're not in the top 20. And so I wonder, does Doug Peterson maybe take over play calling duties at some point for Press Taylor? I know he's an old friend of the Colts. I'm not trying to blame him, but it's very glaring when they're remarkable with the script that they come up with throughout the week that I'm sure Doug Peterson has a lot to do with, and then they can't move the ball. They had 50 yards before the Christian Kirk touchdown in that game for about a 25-minute game time stretch. They had 50 offensive yards. It's a problem, and it's been plaguing them the entire season.
So Brad Spielberger every Tuesday right here in the 4 o'clock hour with a recap of the previous weekend of NFL. He's with us every week via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Hey, Brad, I appreciate it as always, too, and we'll catch up next week and see what's up.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Good. Really good stuff right there. I will come back. I got time for your calls. I mentioned Nate Atkins coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. What did Michael Pittman Jr. mean by it? I asked Brad that regarding the targeting numbers. Brad suggested that, hey, it was Denzel Ward on Pittman Jr. most of the time, so that was just Steichen and Minshew going away from that particular matchup. Talked to Nate Atkins about that coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Pacers open up coming up tomorrow night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse versus the Washington Wizards. There's a great deal of excitement surrounding this team, and we'll talk about that. For Bally Sports Indiana, Jeremiah Johnson joins us next. Also, your opportunity to win some Bullseye event passes coming up before the 5 o'clock hour. Don't go anywhere. 93.5.
Johnson County.
The Ride with JMV.
It takes him a second to get on the stool because he's under 5 feet tall.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
NBA season off and running later on tonight. Pacers-Wizards start things at Gainbridge Fieldhouse tomorrow night. Inside the Lounge, YouTube Live. Brought to you by Win Schuler Spreadable Cheeses. Win Schuler Spreadable Cheeses, a variety of flavors. It is going to make any party you have, and maybe a viewing party to watch that first Pacer game coming up tomorrow night. You can watch our good friend joining us now, the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline from Bally Sports, Indiana. Jeremiah Johnson being a part of it as you soak up a little hoop and incredible Central Indiana spreadability. JJ is on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Have you got yourself a tub of Win Schuler spreadable cheese for the family yet?
I have not, but it sounds like it needs to be added to my grocery list.
It better. It better be. I can't believe you haven't done it already.
Well, I've got some time. I'm all focused on Wednesday night, obviously, and a trip to Cleveland this weekend, but I am kind of looking forward to getting, the 2 games under our belts and relaxing on Sunday. So maybe I'll get some of that spreadable cheese for Sunday afternoon.
I know you're a fan of spreadability, buddy. And there's a lot of spread in that spreadability. You'll love it. You'll love it. I just want to hear your awkward lack of a response and let everybody soak that up for just a minute right there.
I told you I was ready for it on Sunday. Now I'm ready to talk Pacers basketball. It's good to be back on your show again, John.
It is. It is. It's been a long time, it seems, right here. I want to start with this team getting up and down the floor because my concern has been this. I want to see them get better defensively, especially on the perimeter. And I think, well, you have to for one because they were dreadful last year. But the other thing that I don't want to see is their scoring average, their scoring punch falter at all. I want it to sustain, if not grow, especially the way that they play. And some of these new weapons they have now a part of this team. How do you think both sides of the basketball will look, especially with a lot of the new pieces they have to this basketball puzzle?
They might both be just a little bit of a work in progress. You would expect the offense to be ahead of the defense just because they have so much continuity and they honestly have so much firepower. And you saw the offense succeed at a high level last season. And the difference would be adding in a guy like Bruce Brown is going to automatically make your team better defensively. And maybe it might make your defense improve, but your offense take just a little bit of a step back only because he's not as in sync with that group as maybe he was or as that group had with other players, and you throw Obi Toppin in the mix as well. So my way of looking at the first 2 to 3 weeks of the season is defense is most important. It's what they talked about from exit interview day all the way until probably today after practice, and they probably want to get to the point where they're not just talking about it, but they're showing some improvement. So can you see some defensive improvement and maybe even offense just be about the same as it was last year? That would be a win, I think, for everybody. But the starting lineup specifically and maybe some of the second unit combinations, there might be still some awkward early season moments, even offensively, just because of rotations. I noticed that a little bit in the second quarter of that last preseason game against the Cavaliers. It was Andrew Nembhard's first game action, and so that 5-man combination, playing Buddy Hield off the bench, I didn't think they were as in sync as maybe I had hoped or expected, but I do think that will come. But if early on a guy like Bruce Brown can help them get stops on the perimeter, if he can go out there against Jordan Poole, who we know is probably going to be trying to get 30 every single night, if he gets that defensive assignment and is able to slow him down, and as you often talk about, prevent him from getting that open lane to the basket, that's where the real progress will be made long-term and at the end of the season.
JJ, would you foresee if they do struggle compared to what we saw last year offensively out of the gate, would they think about putting Buddy Hield back into the starting lineup as an option?
It's a fascinating question. It'll be something that'll be worth watching. I still think that there's enough of a reason to let Benedict Mathurin and Bruce Brown have this opportunity and not be so worried about a game-by-game, lack of offense. Now, what you might see, though, if Buddy Hield has it going like he did Friday was just a preseason game, so who won or lost did not necessarily matter. But I think he hit his first 6 3-pointers, and so if he's having that kind of game, then maybe the rotation that you see on the court, the final 5 minutes, maybe isn't the same as the first 5 minutes, and that's where you trust Rick Carlisle and the coaching staff. But it's not a simple challenge that is in front of that staff to have 15 guys who on another team might be in a 10-man rotation, and on any night you're going to be 5 guys out of the rotation. So you mentioned specifically Buddy Hield. He'll be in that rotation, but if the form holds from what we saw in the preseason, if he comes off the bench, will he be all right with that? Will he still get the number of shots? There are a lot of different guys to keep happy, and so you hope all the feel-good comments you're hearing, everything you're seeing with your own eyes and the way they cheer on their teammates during the course of a game, you hope that can continue even from the guys that are maybe at a lesser role than they're used to.
And I think the positivity of good results, meaning winning, I think that takes away some of the, hey, you know what, I didn't get this much clock in the third quarter or that much clock down the stretch here. I think that takes away some of that argument. Plus, if they're going to get to 45, as I've predicted, and a lot of people think that I've gone way overboard with that particular prediction, you have to take advantage of this early schedule. I mean, you really do. And I know a lot of people go, well, I'll wait for the NBA until Christmas or after Christmas or whatever. From a Pacer standpoint, I think a lot of what we're going to see results-wise at the end of the year will be predicated on how good of a start this group, learning together with one another, gets off to beginning tomorrow night.
You have that exactly accurate. I think anyone that would tell you you're not going to start paying attention until Christmas, you're going to be missing out, because a lot will be determined for this team in the direction I think that they want to take, even leading up until February, by how they start this season. I just recorded a podcast with Rick Carlisle. The sideline guys are back. That'll be out at some point tomorrow. But I asked him if he broke the season into tiers, and it got me thinking earlier today before I asked that question to how Tony Dungy, remember when he would famously break the season into quarters? And I wondered if, having never asked Rick Carlisle that, if he does break the season into parts. Is he someone that wants to look at the record after 20 to 30 games? But he was quick to note the schedule early on in the season, the number of home games, and the opportunity that this team has to get off to a good start. And as he mentioned to us, to play where you have more wins than losses, and to be playing from ahead instead of right behind in the standings. And I think that is front and center in the way they're thinking, the way they're coaching, the way they're approaching the season. There is no easing into this season. It's a completely different mindset and approach than last season, where I think they just were wanting to get guys experience, wanting to see what they had, and not necessarily worry about the record. They're still not particularly focused on a number, but they know where they want to be in April, and to get there, they really have to have a good October and November.
We're going to see Andrew Nembhard be more of just kind of the floating around guard that we saw him play role-wise as a rookie, or is it going to be more specific to the point guard role?
Yeah, I'll be watching that as well. I can't wait to see these games.
I'm just bringing honestly, I'm asking a hell of a lot of good questions here.
And players and positions that have roles that I'm fascinated to see how they play out. Because if you would have said maybe in April or May, if you're going to get a guy like Obi Toppin, you're going to get Bruce Brown, you're going to try to get Benedict Mather in minutes with the starting group, you could make a case that T.J. McConnell maybe goes to the third point guard. But T.J. McConnell is going to have none of that. And so I think they, for good reason, have figured out a way that they can play those two guys together. And it'll be times when they're both on the court, and you may see McConnell go to the corner. There may be times you see Andrew Nembhard go to the corner. They both can attack. They can penetrate. That's the important thing about this offense, is to get 2 feet in the paint and then make things happen. So I'm just curious to see, though, how they play together, because it was a lot of times last year Nembhard starting, McConnell off the bench. Nembhard was playing with Halliburton, so he can play that two guard, but they know he can be the primary ball handler as well. So I think it'll be a little bit of both. The good news about the NBA right now, it's less about point guard and two guard, even though we clearly know when Tyrese is on the court, he's the guy. But there are a lot of other times it's two primary ball handlers, and you're able to play that way. So I do want to see how Nembhard and McConnell play together, and knowing that they've got a guy like Buddy Hield on the outside to get shots. That second unit should have an advantage most nights against the opposition.
Jeremiah Johnson start things out coming up tomorrow night. Bally Sports, Indiana, with the Wizards and the Pacers game number 1 at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. JJ's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline with us. And maybe I'm chief among them right here. The expectations I think we all have for Obi Toppin. I will say this. I think that it is soaked in this case with a good angle. One is, I think the dude's going to feel like that the restraints are absolutely off here compared to when and how he was able to play in New York. And I'm not suggesting at all that's not a good team and it's not well coached, because it is. But I think the style they play is just drastically different, and I think that's how he's going to feel. We'll see. The other aspect is, too, I'm always interested in a second stop like this, especially with a guy that was in New York and had all this as a lottery selection, this greatness. Here he comes, the toast of New York, and now you get the opportunity because they gave up on you to get a little bit of payback. I do. I think that chip of motivation on the shoulder will play a significant role as to why maybe I've kind of outthought this a little bit in terms of my expectations. But offensively, I think the sky could be the limit for him compared to what we have seen in his New York seasons to this point.
Well, the one thing that we saw in his New York seasons is whenever he played against the Pacers, he looked like the guy that you wanted to see in a Pacers uniform. He had some of his best games.
Especially down the stretch last year. My goodness, yeah.
Yeah, those last 2 games, or 2 of the last 3 games of the season, he could not miss. He was that stretch 4 that could run the floor. And the big thing, the style of play that the Pacers play, that benefits Obi Toppin. It's an opportunity where also, every single year how many good players are coming into the draft trying to take someone's spot. So this is the time for Obi Toppin to prove that what happened in New York, while he was serviceable, he was a rotation player. I don't think he was what he expected from himself, or what maybe even Knicks fans had hoped to see with where he was drafted. So he gets this opportunity. And then the one thing that you did not mention that must be mentioned is Tyrese Halliburton was a big factor, I think, in going after and acquiring Obi Toppin. And Obi Toppin knows, well, he watched Myles Turner. He's seen some other players really see their game grow by playing alongside Tyrese Halliburton. Nothing against Jalen Brunson, but I just feel like that Tyrese Halliburton's the kind of player that if you're on the court with him, he's your point guard. He's going to make you some money. I mean, he's going to make you a better player. You're going to get better stats. You're going to do everything. Everything is going to get a little bit more. So he'll never have a better opportunity, I don't think, than he has right now.
All right, one final question with JJ regarding, in this case, Myles Turner. We saw last year he had great numbers, obviously got that extension. What do you think his numbers are going to be like this year? Because, we're talking about a lot of players, and, you have a great elite-level passer and sharer of the ball in Tyrese Halliburton, but at times it may feel like that you need more than one out there. Numbers-wise, you think Myles will approach or be around what we saw that of Myles a year ago?
I think he can be close to that. Before last season, it was crazy to look at his basketball reference and his stats and how he was about 12-8 or 11.9 and 7.8. I mean, his averages for the course of the season were nearly identical every single season until last season. And he had that big jump last season. Obviously, it helped to have Tyrese Halliburton, leading the way and finding him, and just to have that clear role as the 5, not the 5 on defense and the 4 on offense that he had for so much of his career. So I see no reason why his numbers shouldn't be the same. The only thing that I'll say is on a night-to-night basis, it's going to be interesting to look down at the box score, and on our post-game show, we'll put up very early in the show, we'll put up the leading scorers and the first 4 or 5 guys. They might change quite a bit. So there might be a night he's got, 18 to 20. There might be a night he has 10. But the one number that I'm going to be watching, and I was impressed by this on Friday against Cleveland, is the rebounding. Rebounding is very important. Even though we talk all about defense, I think rebounding and defense go hand in hand. But Myles and Obi Toppin both have to get in there and get some boards. Myles can't just, block shots.
Yeah.
He's one of the best in the world at that. But he also has to be in position to help get some of those rebounds. You need to have a guy like Bruce Brown helping down in there on the glass as well. So while the scoring and the rebounding averages are important, I expect them to be probably somewhere in between where he was last season and where he had been in his career. The rebounding needs to be maybe a higher number.
Well, JJ, I will say this: the rebound the rebounding numbers can be higher if he doesn't have to try to come over and, pick up everybody's guy that gets lost, on the perimeter, which is basically every trip down the floor. And also, I mean, you get he in the past, and this has always driven me nuts. He will let the guards come down and just kind of, all right, they're going to go up and get it because, they want to get this rebound, add that to their stats. I'm thinking 33, go up and get that, all right? Don't let the guards sneak down here and grab this. That's 3 or 4 a game. Come on. That's what I'm doing at home. Come on now. Go get that.
Hey,
add 3 or 4.
I heard you to start the show. You've already claimed victory, and
I did.
Deservedly so. I think no one can argue that you were right all along, and you hope to just see more of what you saw last season. And the other thing that I'll add, though, it is, I think people, whether there may be fans that, nitpick certain aspects of his game, you have to have a ton of respect for what he has been through, the different styles, coaches, teammates he's had. He's entering his 9th NBA season with the same team, with the Pacers. He was drafted in the lottery. He's been through so many changes. And in his 8th season, have his breakout year, his best year, and also increase his leadership role. It really feels like it's Tyrese Halliburton's team, but it's almost a 1A, 1B in terms of the leadership and the vocal responsibility that Myles Turner is accepting. And so I see no reason why anyone should, on a night-to-night basis, nitpick about certain numbers in the box score. I think you need to appreciate what Myles does, what he's meant to this franchise, and then the way he's represented.
Well, they shut up last year for me, but it'll restart, I'm sure, coming up tomorrow night. So I'm very excited about that part of it. So, it's his play is what dictated the stoppage of that. So something he's going to have to maintain. And JJ will also point out there were really little to no expectations for this group a year ago, this team a year ago, I should say. The expectations pushed by me, I'm sure, are made much higher. So that also, in terms of if they don't get off to a fast start, can lead to a little bit of early disappointment. So here's to having a good first game and a nice start to the season for this group.
It is crazy. Opening night is at home against the Wizards, the same as last season, but it just feels completely different. 1 year ago, talking with you before a season that I had no idea what to expect. You look at opening night, Andrew Nemar didn't play, and Myles Turner, remember,
tripped over the ball boy.
The opening tip.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine my Twitter handle when that went down?
And even the first 2 or 3 weeks, he did the interview with Woj. There was so much uncertainty and everything with Myles, but just this whole team is just in a better place right now.
Oh, that was fun. You reminded me of all the fun times this time last year. Thanks a lot, JJ. Appreciate it.
But the first half of the season, they did show. Think about this. They were 5th in the East at the midway point of the season.
Yep.
And if you look at that healthy team to the team you have right now, the 2 players, like you don't have O'Shea Brissett and you don't have Chris Duarte. You add in Obi Toppin and Bruce Brown, and just by that alone, I mean, to me, that's an upgrade.
Well, who was the dumbass that rolled over Halliburton last year in New York? Was it Randall or was it Robinson? Who was it? I can't remember.
Yeah, the play was so crazy because I was worried that it was his knee and then it was his ankle, and it was really hard to know when exactly he was injured. So I do know the person who talked about him after the game. At some earlier in the season when they played the Knicks, remember, we don't need to bring him up either.
Wally Zerbiak. Wally Zerbiak.
Hey, the Pacers-Knicks rivalry, let's say it's back on. Tomorrow's Pacers-Wizards, but I do look forward to those games.
I appreciate you, man. We'll be watching tomorrow night.
Happy to be on again. I hope everybody's watching. We're on the air. Actually, 6 o'clock, 1 hour. Pacers Live pregame, and even before that, a season preview show. So really 5:30 on until about 11 o'clock, wall-to-wall Pacers tomorrow night.
Thank you, JJ.
Thanks, John.
Jeremiah Johnson, Bally Sports, Indiana. Quick break. Back with you next.
Colts fans, get ready for game day at Bullseye Event Group's Colts VIP Tailgate presented by Hayes & Sons. The Colts VIP Tailgate starts 3 hours prior to kickoff before every Colts home game next to Lucas Oil Stadium at Bullseye Event Center. Bullseye Event Group's Colts VIP Tailgate is open to all ages and features all-you-can-eat food by the winner of Gordon Ramsay's MasterChef Legends on Fox, Chef Kelsey Murphy, as well as Nameless Catering and a premium open bar for 3 hours. Get your Colts VIP Tailgate tickets today at bullseyeeventgroup.com.
remodel.com.
Hey, John, and when it's time for a remodel, I got you covered. Well, better said here, Get 'em Associates have you covered. Let's go with the absolute best on this. I've told you I'm thinking about doing it right now, too, both interior and exterior-wise. Get 'em Associates, 35 years, trusted in Central Indiana as your home remodeler. The best for 35 years. So if you're thinking about it, let's engage here. Let's do something about it at getem.com. Get that private consultation going today. Make sure you tell them JMV sent you, and then you're going to go with the best and make your property, your home, inside and out, look spectacular again. That's Get 'em Associates, getem.com. Again, getem.com, GETTUM.com. That's getem.com today.
At Anderson, we understand the challenges of builders and contractors better than most. Here's proof from real pros.
The best service department is the one you don't need, right? But when you do, I know they're going to be there.
The 400 series has earned my trust to the point where we have put it in our own home.
When somebody says Anderson, everybody responds quality.
Helping builders and contractors craft their legacy. Anderson, the #1 trusted window and door brand. Claims based on 2022 Anderson brand surveys of U.S. contractors and builders.
Hey, it's JMV here with Lance Smith, owner of LD Smith Plumbing. And Lance, I keep running out of hot water in my house. What's going on?
Well, if you're running out of hot water too quick, either there's a problem with your existing water heater or it's undersized. A great solution for that is a tankless water heater. You could take a 24-hour shower, never run out of hot water. And right now, we got a great promotion going, $300 off any tankless water heater.
That's a great deal, and I need an hour-long shower. That's the best. Lance and his local team at LD Smith Plumbing, ldsmithplumbing.com.
Treat yourself at Big Red Liquors. Shop at a local Big Red for cold beer, clean stores, friendly staff, and Big Red buying big means bigger savings for you. Become a VIP and unlock hundreds of deals across the store, saving even more on the brands you love at Big Red Liquors.
We're the Hellsberg Wedding Band, and whoa, look at that ring. Boy, is she fancy, dancing with that ring. Everybody checking her, dancing with that ring. Disco ball on a finger, dancing with that ring. Honestly, nobody's dancing because they're just staring at that ring. For a great selection of high-quality natural and lab-grown diamonds and custom rings at a great price, visit a Hellsberg near you or Hellsberg.com and she'll be dancing with that ring.
Hi, this is Beth Robazzini. Nominate a veteran for a free water heater and you may win one too. Just go to veteransdaygiveaway.com. Sponsored by B&W Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical.
The Fan invites you to Wheeler Mission's 21st Annual Drumstick Dash, presented by Huntington Bank. Join the Fan Thanksgiving morning in Broad Ripple to help those experiencing homelessness. You'll move your feet so others can eat. Learn more at drumstickdash.org.
The Colts play host to the New Orleans Saints. Coverage Sunday morning at 9 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
It's Jim Perry, now talk to him, damn it.
93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Greg Rakestraw, Brad Spielberger, Jeremiah Johnson on the show today. Podcast, 107.5thefan.com. My bad, I have yet to make that trek inside the Win Schuler Spreadable Cheeses Lounge. My bad. Bad host. Let's get in there with everybody. You can watch, you can listen, you can participate inside the Win Schuler Spreadable Cheeses Lounge. Where have I been? Where have I been? JMV could use some help here. Jackson Palmer of Indian Creek, nominated for Indy Star's Football Player of the Week. Could you mention him on your show and encourage people to vote for him? Voting is tight. Shout out to Jackson Palmer of Indian Creek. Down in Trafalgar, not too far from the Crowbar down in Trafalgar. Great spot right there. Crowbar. So keep going at it. JMV, I really enjoyed the interview with Greg Rakestraw. Noblesville, ready to roll. Conference will make another forward step to get past the regionals this year. Jim McCann, Southern California, Michael Pittman Jr., not okay with entertaining losses. Glad he wants to be a difference maker, and this losing crap ticks him off. We also talked to Brad Spielberger about that. He said Denzel Ward had him, and you could tell that clearly the Colts were going away most of that game from that particular matchup. and 2 receptions over 80 yards. Of course, one ended up being a 75-yard touchdown catch and run. But Michael Pittman Jr. was, clearly not that happy about it after the game. We'll talk to Nate Atkins, who had this story after the game on Sunday. Nate's going to join us coming up here at the top of the hour. But I thought Brad Spielberger explained why he was utilized in that fashion about as well as you could, given that particular matchup on Sunday. All right, if you're on hold, I'll get to you. Bullseye Event Center passes, bullseyeeventgroup.com and the Colts VIP tailgate. Presented by Hayes & Sons Restoration. All you can eat, all you can drink. My man DJ Skids is a part of it. You guys want to go? I got 2 passes ready for you right here. And if you don't win them, log on to bullseyeeventgroup.com. You can win them that way. Check that. You can buy them that way. You can win them right now. Number 9 at 239-1070 is a winner. Tomorrow's show, Thursday and Friday, and me and Jake Query on Saturday midday. I'll tell you when and where, and Nate Atkins of the Stars next.
7 a.m. on The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
I love JMV. He looks like Rascal Flatts guy.
Got a cool soul patch.
He does, and a buttery smooth voice.
Oh, yeah.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Loaded show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Greg Rakestraw, Brad Spielberger of PFF. JJ is going to help get the season started for the Pacers tomorrow night. Bally Sports Indiana, as he mentioned. There is a lot to see and new names to get used to. Pacers Wizards coming up tomorrow night. Of course, that game can be heard here as well. I want to say 6:30, right? 6:30. So do I have to go until 6:30? I don't have to go after 6 tomorrow night, do I?
No, I think we're done at 5:30 tomorrow.
Are we really done at 5:30?
I think.
So do they tip at 6:30, or is that a 7 o'clock tip? I'm looking at 6:30 up there.
I thought we ended at 5:30.
So I did too.
Tomorrow, but maybe I'm mistaken.
The reason why I bring that up, Harris Hoosier Park Racing and Casino in Anderson for me coming up tomorrow. That's a 7 o'clock tip. That's at 6:30. I will say this, my memory's a little bit foggy, but normally that's how anything goes was hatched.
Maybe that is what is happening. We're going till 6:30 tomorrow. I'm not sure.
Hey, well, guess what? It sounds like you guys, and I don't know how long it's been. It's been forever. And really, it may not be the worst thing. It's been forever since we've heard anything goes. So we may have a 6 o'clock hour if anything goes. Holy crap, tomorrow night. Harris Hoosier Park Racing and Casino in Anderson for you tomorrow. Kip's Pub coming up on Thursday. That's Larceny Bourbon Locks, Luna Azul Tequila Shots Week 8. Bud Light Blue Friday, Saints Colts tickets from the back 9 right down there off of Morris. Going to be a blast, so be ready for that. And then did you know that Jake Query and I are going to do 2 hours down from the Horseshoe in Shelbyville coming up on Saturday? Big goings on down there. And I'm telling you, the conversation is going to be elite. Telling you, elite on Saturday. So locations in which you can join me and or us. We would love to see you on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline from the Indianapolis Star. He is Nate Atkins. So we'll start right here, and I know you've probably been inundated with questions regarding your story of Michael Pittman Jr., his quote about not being, again, paraphrasing here, an integral part of the offense. 75 yards on a catch and run for a touchdown, over 80 on 2 receptions, targeted 5 times. And I will say, I talk to Brad Spielberger every Tuesday at PFF here. And he says, legitimately coaching-wise, there was a reason why, because oftentimes he had Denzel Ward, and he thought that they were going away oftentimes from the playmaking ability of Ward. First, what did you think about his words? Was it just kind of heat of the moment after that disappointing loss stuff, or was there some legitimate disappointment in not seeing the ball more?
Yeah, so Michael Pittman Jr. is one of the fiercest competitors I've ever been around, one of the most emotional players, both in a game, after a game. It's just kind of the way he's growing up in this, the son of an 11-year running back who's kind of always had the weight of expectation on him as a 5-star recruit, as a Blitnikoff Award finalist, and then a second-round pick. So he wears a lot of things personally, and so for him, anytime they lose, anytime the Colts lose, it doesn't matter what the score is, the circumstances, what they're up against. He internalizes that a lot, and it's either, something was missing from his game, the way he was able to play, the performance he had. A lot of times he rips himself in these moments, and in this one, it was just sort of the frustration of not being able to get this one done as close as they got. And everyone wore that in the Colts locker room. But for him, he certainly thought, he's always going to look at it as what more could I have done? What more should I have done? And so I think, but it very much is about this game and this loss and the fact that they lost. He doesn't do this after wins. And he was, I think one thing that's been twisted a little bit, or maybe not twisted, misunderstood about his comments is that it's not about his role this season, which he's never complained about until Sunday. It was just about Sunday's usage and the way that resulted in a loss. And so the way, when he's looking at this, he finished with 2 catches on 5 targets. He had the 75-yard touchdown. And I can see why people think, he had the 75-yard touchdown, so he got a big play. And what the way he operates, the way he thinks is that he can do that on any play. He really feels that any slant pass, he can break a tackle and make something happen. Of course, it's not always going to happen that way, but that's the mentality he likes to play with. And I think he has a point on that alone about running slant passes and letting him do something in the teeth of the defense. And honestly, I think the Colts agree with him, because when we talked to Shane Steichen on Monday, he had two regrets when he went back and looked through the game plan, and that was the situation where Myles Garrett had a strip sack in the end zone because they decided to try and take a shot and do a slow developing route to go deep. And Shane said he should have thrown quick there instead of a slow developing route. Well, slant pass is a quick pass. And then he said the next possession, when they threw a screen pass on third down and it was incomplete, they gave the ball back and the Browns got a field goal. He said, I could have thrown a slant there. So very much. And then when we asked him specifically about Pittman, he said, this happens in the league, and we do have to find ways to get him the ball more. So Pittman has had a very strong role in this offense. And like I said, he's been very happy with it, but it did disappear on Sunday. And some of the reasons were valid. The Colts were, they wanted to correct the 55 pass attempts for Gardner Minshew in Jacksonville. They cut that down to 23. Obviously, that makes sense to avoid Myles Garrett, to lean a little bit more on Jonathan Taylor. But what they had done in other weeks, including the Jacksonville game, is sort of build an extension of the run game through Michael Pittman Jr. by getting him some of these short passes, letting him catch it, short depth of target, screen passes or quick slants, and seeing what he does with the ball as a yak player, as a guy who can break tackles. And that didn't happen at all in that game, really, until that final 75-yard touchdown catch. They tried one in the red zone. That people, I think some people saw it as a drop. Really, it was a play that they had perfectly executed where he beat Rodney McLeod, but the ball's kind of up and behind him, and he tips it back to himself and wasn't quite able to haul it in. If he does, I think he gets tackled right away. But they did not give him any opportunities to kind of catch it and run with it. And, of course, it's hard against Denzel Ward, but what the Browns were doing is they were not moving Denzel around with Michael Pittman. The problem is it looked like he was shadowed on him because the Colts kept running him out there, lined up against him. But Denzel was staying on the left side, from what I understand, and Pittman they were running straight man coverage across the board. So the Colts could have motioned guys around to pick any matchup they wanted to go for. They did this with other players, with Josh Downs at moments, a couple plays for Alec Pierce, and then obviously, they leaned on the run game. But the cost of decreasing the passing volume and everything else that they did was they kind of forgot about a playmaker that they had used in every other game so far. So just relative to this one specific game, when everybody's looking through and figuring out what more could we have done, that was one area where Pittman looked at it and thought, I could have done some more. And that's him wanting the ball in those moments, wanting to carry the team. And he's the type of guy that when he gets that opportunity, and if he doesn't deliver it, he'll own it all the way. But he wants that opportunity, and when they fall short, he's going to always want a little bit more.
Nate Atkins joins us. Oftentimes, people will suggest, well, he doesn't create enough space, i.e. get open enough. How often, from what you've seen, is that the case?
Yeah, it's interesting. Separation has always been an interesting thing to me because it's all very relative in the NFL, where not many players get that much separation. Of course, there's exceptions to that, the Tyreek Hills of the world, and there are certain offenses that are gorgeous at designing up separation, like the 49ers of Kyle Shanahan or the Chiefs of Andy Reid. But for the most part, the average, the difference between the guys low in separation, the guys middle in separation, even pretty high, is very, very minute. And it's also different based on the player. A guy like Josh Downs at, his stature needs arguably a little bit more separation because the catch radius isn't the same. The ability to kind of finish through contact. And that's not to take away from Josh. He wins in a completely different way with some gorgeous routes and everything, and hands and everything else. But for Pittman, separation is never going to be his game, has never needed to be his game. The same way it is other players. Of course, it would help him. He would maybe, ascend a little bit more if he's trying to be that top flight number one receiver. More speed and more separation would get him there. But I mean, he's produced. He's been their leading receiver. This is his third straight year of doing it, and it's been shorter depths of target. And I understand why that with some of the separation numbers leads people to believe he just doesn't separate. But the thing is, they haven't, outside of Anthony Richardson, they have not had a quarterback since Carson Wentz, just a brief spell of Carson Wentz. That's the only time they've had quarterbacks who can really go down the field. And what Carson would do with Pittman that did create these downfield plays is when he would scramble out, hold the ball, and then throw it up. And I think with Pittman, he's one of those players where a 50-50 ball for most players, he looks as more of like a 65-35 because of the catch radius, the experience going up and getting it, just the strength that he gets to play through. And then there's the fact that if he does catch it, he's not just immediately tackled. He can kind of finish through that and add yak in a way other players can't. So it's all kind of about, the type of player he is. If you think about him more as sort of like the wide receiver version in a separation way of like these tight ends, you wouldn't not throw to a star tight end just because his separation numbers don't compare to the top wide receivers in the league. It's just understanding that type of player and the way that he tries to win.
It's funny, too, and Nate Atkins joins us. Josh Downs, I think, had, 6 targets on Sunday, which obviously just one more than what Michael Pittman Jr. had in that game. The other aspect of it is I know that going in they wanted to utilize their tight ends more, but you look at just how often they're able or can do that. It has been few and far between. Do they view this offensively as an issue?
They definitely want more production out of that position. I will say on Sunday, I really felt like they looked at the situation they were up against with Kylan Granson being out, still no Jelani Woods, and what they were up against in Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith. And they more or less turned their tight ends into extra linemen. And you saw them stay in against Myles Garrett. Obviously, it didn't always work. He still was able to wreck the game, but that was the plan. And they only got 2 targets, and then somehow they only finished with 1 catch for -6 yards, which obviously is not acceptable. That has to be one of the worst marks ever for a position group in a single game. But it didn't keep them from moving the ball. But this is one of those areas where, what they needed, the offense became very boom or bust without some of those short depth of target, chain moving type of plays. They were pretty much a run game with Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor, and then they got some explosive plays with Josh Downs and Michael Pittman Jr. And then they had 4 turnovers. So everything was very kind of hurt. Every play it felt like was very big, either positive or negative, where they could have used some of the more kind of boring standard plays, just outlets to throw the ball when under pressure. And it's one of the battles that they're in right now with the injuries they have at the position, the youth at that position, and being down to a backup quarterback in Gardner Minshew, who, he's trying to build chemistry, find his favorite guys, and he's finding some good connections with the wide receivers. But, he's got to get better at, and they know this. They pretty much said it this week. He's got to play better under pressure. And one of the ways that they can get him to do that is instead of immediately panicking at early pressure and either throwing the ball away or losing it on a fumble or something like that, look for one of those outlet players that may not be the guy he's necessarily looking at first in the progression, but who's there to sort of bail him out of those situations. A lot of veteran quarterbacks will lean on guys like that. Part of it is he hasn't had consistent play out of a tight end to maybe build that, but that's what they have to have right now because they can't have the things that are happening right now the moment that he gets under pressure.
Hey, Nate, I know you guys didn't learn anything from Shane Steichen yesterday regarding Juju Brents, but I kind of want to get what you're thinking about. And certainly it seemed as if yesterday the expression was he's going to miss this weekend, if not more time than that. But what's the plan in that secondary, you think, moving forward here in the short term?
Yeah, so we also Juju Brents left that game with a quad injury, and I don't expect him to play on Sunday. The Colts do not expect him to play on Sunday, and we'll see after that. It's an injury that could linger for a couple weeks, but it also sort of depends on what they can patch together in the absence, because obviously they are very, very thin at that position. Were before that, but now they're down to a situation where Jalen Jones, the 7th-round rookie, will be their top outside corner, and he has impressed them, but that's obviously a bump. And then at the other spot, they're deciding what to do between, do they play Darrell Baker Jr., who obviously got in some tough spots on Sunday, and he's played some and not played some and is kind of having a tough season, but, is there a more experienced guy there? Or do they go with a guy like Amir Speed? They just signed last Friday, claimed off waivers from the Patriots, who's a rookie. He's going to have 3 practices with the team. And I asked Gus Bradley today, is that enough to get a guy ready? And he said, well, we have to figure something out. We have to be flexible because of the spot that they're in. One of the things they have looked at and thought about as a staff is playing Kenny Moore at an outside spot and doing something else at the nickel. I know they've looked at playing Nick Cross some at the nickel. He's trained there, and they want to get him on the field. But Moore, they really love how Kenny's playing at the nickel spot. He leads the team in tackles for loss, and he's the communicator to those young players at those outside spots. So they don't want to mess with 2 positions right now. So I think they're going to do something at outside corner that involves, I would, if I had to guess, I think it will be Amir Speed playing more on Sunday, just because of what they've shown us about their trust level with Darrell Baker Jr. But I don't think it will be just one solution to it. I think it's probably likely a mix of Speed, Darrell Baker, maybe a little bit more of Kenny Moore playing an outside spot, maybe living in base as much as they can. And one thing they're going to have to do is just simplify everything they do on the back end for those cornerbacks so that that they don't risk too much. And so it's just going to really stress the other pieces between the safeties, Kenny in the slot, obviously the front 7 and the cover linebackers. They're all going to have to kind of lift this up together. So it's sort of a committee approach to solving the problem.
Either way, and we always doubt this, but either way, you think there's any interests with this Colts team as we approach the NFL trade deadline?
That's an interesting question. I'd feel like if you take it back just a couple weeks ago, I think they were starting to really buy into this team, being a lot better than they thought, possibly being a playoff type of team when they were 3-2, and they had, they beat the Titans to go to 3-2. They had Anthony Richardson playing really well, and that's, I think, part of why they got the deal done at that time with Jonathan Taylor. And if they were still in that situation, even at 3-4, if they just had not pulled these games out, I think you would have to argue that the spot that they're in at outside corner, why not give this team a chance? Why not bring in a veteran that doesn't, that lets you see just how far this can go, and then see, there's so much payoff to the idea of Anthony Richardson getting a playoff game or getting these big time experiences late in the season. The calculus just all kind of changed with that injury to Anthony Richardson, where it made this year. Not that they're not trying to win, because they are, but it took them a little bit back to where I think they were, back in the spring and the summer when they did not address this position when they needed to. Stephon Gilmore asked for a trade. They sent him out. They drafted 3 rookies. Isaiah Rodgers Sr. got suspended for the year. They didn't replace him. They decided to just sort of make it an evaluation year. And that's kind of the spot they're back in, maybe in a more dire spot than they thought at the time. But at the time, they were relying on undrafted players anyway. So they're kind of in that same spot. So I would be surprised if they make a move, if they're trading for somebody. It just seems like it's just not usually Chris Ballard's style to trade away a draft pick during the season. And if he was going to, I think they would need to be either a little bit better record-wise or have that sort of upside at the quarterback position and that need to get him some bigger games, whereas I just think the injury at that spot and now the piling injuries at cornerback, not to mention, right tackle with Braden Smith, I think it makes it less likely.
Did Atkins of the Stars with us via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I would agree with you on that, too. It's just kind of like playing through it. You get the Richardson injury, you get the last 2 games and losses and such, too. It looks like Tennessee is trying to tear it down a little bit right here. It's, I guess, unfortunate. I mentioned this before I let you go. I think against New Orleans, this is going to be, I mentioned Renaissance early on the show. This is going to be that type of game for Jonathan Taylor. It just kind of seems like we're on the verge now of Jonathan Taylor getting a lot and a lot more. I thought last weekend, Sunday, was the springboard. You agree?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I thought he should have played more in that game.
I agree. Completely agree. Yes.
Yeah, he ended up getting the same number of carries, same number of snaps as Zach Moss. But Shane Steichen has said that his philosophy is he's going to ride the hot hand at running back. And I just think right now you have to say that's Jonathan Taylor with the way he played on Sunday. And that's why I thought he would have played more when they went to Zach Moss and late in that game. I thought they could have kept Taylor in then, but maybe it's possible that they just didn't feel like he was quite at that workload level. But they've been increasing it so much each week that between the time he's had now of 3 or 4 weeks of practice to build up, and then the skills he's showing out there, where we're seeing some of that old 2021 vision and cutback and ability to finish through contact, and then the upside in the passing game 2 straight weeks. I think they need that to launch explosive plays, in the run and pass game. And also that's a way to get away from some of this turnover issue, is that not that there's no risk ever of Jonathan Taylor fumbling, but certainly it is a lot safer to have him carry the load and carry the ball than anything else that they're doing in the pass game, where 2 straight weeks they've had 8 turnovers, and they've all involved the quarterback. They're all turnovers by the quarterback, and it's just a spot that their backup quarterback right now is in, and at this point in the season. So I think Jonathan Taylor's got to be the guy to carry the load, create the explosive plays, and get them out of their own negative plays. Because really, you look at this offense, they're the only offense in the NFL that has scored 20 points in every game, which I think is a huge testament to Shane Steichen and how an improved offensive line and how much a lot of this is clicking. But the turnovers are the thing that they have to fix, and I think Jonathan Taylor is sort of the key to that.
How interested are they in taking to the league a flag or 2 down the stretch here? What type of response will they get, and will we ever know anything regarding that, or will all parties here ultimately just move on? I guess that also is related to how pissed were they after it? Did you really get a feel that they were, certainly not to the level of the fans, but in disagreement with those pair of flags down the stretch, one of which really cost them the game?
Yeah, so they send some plays to the league every week, interestingly enough. Some of them are very innocuous, but it's just things that they want to kind of understand a little bit more and watch for that'll play into how they use their players. And so as they're teaching these young cornerbacks and they're trying to grow from this game, they want to do that anyway with those flags, even if the answer, is that they were correct calls. Yeah. It's possible the league, once in a while the league will come out and, they'll say that the call was wrong. That's really all that ends up happening. It's not like they change the score or anything like that. But
not like in the NBA, they don't do it every time. Like the NBA always has that final 2 minutes report, and you end up going. They want to be transparent, but you end up going, "Man, I didn't need to hear that."
Yeah, exactly. They don't do really as much of that in the NFL. But interesting, I asked a lot of players in the locker room, mostly just kind of off to the side, just to get a sense of how kind of upset they were or not upset. And I just didn't. I don't know that they agreed with the calls, and certainly some that did not, but I didn't sense that they felt like this was a game stolen from them. And I've covered 3 teams, and I've been in moments where they have, and they flat out come out and been outraged and felt like they did everything to win, and it just wasn't there. And it's not to say that they thought the calls were, right to make in the moment, or that they didn't, that they couldn't have gotten more help. But I think they understood that they did a lot of things in that game to lose it when they should have won, between the 4 turnovers and between just how thin they got on that back end. I mean, on that same drive, they gave up a 30-yard completion on 3rd and 10 to P.J. Walker to extend the drive. And on those penalties specifically, regardless of kind of where you're at of whether they were the right call, it still was a cornerback who wasn't in the best spot, literally in terms of keeping his hands off of players, looking back for the ball. But also, this is a player that they had, early, just a couple of weeks ago, benched and put behind 2 rookies, and then he's thrown out there in a premium position, and the Browns are going right at him with a Pro Bowler like Amari Cooper. They knew they were going to have to try and hang on. So this wasn't a situation where they felt like this was a game in the bag, it's over, and then the refs pulled something. So it's unfortunate. They're frustrated. They wanted the calls, obviously, but I just don't think that it's also not really the temperament of this team, where they've really taken, I think, Shane Steichen's personality, where they just kind of put their heads down, they grind, and they're going to accept the results as they come, and they're going to learn from them. And so I think they're really trying to use this moment, as frustrating as it was on Sunday, as more of a learning, teaching tape for young corners, for the rest of the offense to prevent turnovers, to not open the door to a situation like this And I think that's a pretty mature response.
Yeah, well, it's a damn good thing I have immaturity to a level for all of us right here. So it's a good thing, Nate, because I would agree. Like the initial illegal contact, I had the same thought, and especially after watching it over and over, as Shane Steichen had reaction-wise on the sideline. And he wasn't putting his head down and grinding. He was pissed. And rightly so. And this is just me, right? Watch that play over and over again. And while you could have flagged both on that play if you want, and certainly Darrell Baker Jr. did, this is the illegal contact one. The thing that most stood out to me, in a league where all of these wide receivers cry and whine and do their flag impression needs to be thrown after every single play, Amari Cooper in that moment thought the game was over and didn't think that there was necessarily needed to be a flag thrown his way. I just thought his reaction told the story on really how that call was and how that call should not have been made. That was me. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think when it's a strip sack like that and it ends that way, again, that's a professional response kind of on their end, which is like, can you really complain about the contact that did or didn't happen when the play had no chance in the beginning? And I think that's the frustrating point from the Colts end is that you can go either way, I think, on whether the calls are right, but they didn't have to happen. I mean, they were going to get the strip sack anyway, and then the other play, defensive pass interference. PJ Walker was not completing that pass. You just have to avoid being on the line like that. And unfortunately, they were on the line, and it didn't go the way they wanted.
It stunk is what it did, Nate. Hey, what are you writing about here midweek and then obviously getting into the weekend of that matchup with the Saints?
Yeah, I've got a story coming out tomorrow on just some of the stuff we were talking about with the cornerback position of how they're going to kind of piece this together and kind of move on, at least in the short term, without Juju Brents. And then, a little bit later this week, I'll have something on Kenny Moore that I think will be pretty interesting. So looking forward to diving into that. And I think he's had a pretty interesting season for a guy that really needed a rebound.
Write it up, Nate. And if you ever need a certain level of immaturity, you know where I am. Gotcha? You need a little bit of an addition.
All right. Well, I can be immature in my own ways, too, so maybe sometimes we'll pass the favor back and forth.
Brother, I appreciate you, Nate. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Nate Atkins of the Star on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. There is a new football team coming to town. New football. I didn't even know this did exist, but a new football team, an expansion team for 2025. Give you the lowdown coming up on the other side. The Harris Hoosier Park Race of the Day also on the way. 93.5, 107.5.
Star, this channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
Lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza? 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Harrah's Hoosier Park Race of the Day coming up before the end of the show. Harrah's Hoosier Park Racing and Casino in Anderson tomorrow. I'd love to see you guys up there. All right, so on the way, this is interesting, right? The Indoor Football League, the IFL, has announced today the addition of an Indianapolis expansion team for the 2025 season. The Indy expansion team was announced today at the grounds of the Fishers Events Center. IFL Commissioner Todd Tryon and team owner Jim Hallett. The brand new Fishers Events Center will be the home of the newest IFL franchise. Some quotes: great leadership, great market, a beautiful new arena, and great ownership. Everything we're looking for, said the commish, Todd Tryon. 2025 will be here before you know it, and the Indy market is going to love this. The team will be managed by the same front office as the Indy Fuel, who are set to begin play inside the new event center toward the end of 2024. The official team name will be announced at a later date. That means I think this falls upon our shoulders to come up with an appropriate name here. So let's get going. Start grinding on that. That was very 90s what I just said, by the way. A team name at a later date. So it is going to be up to you, listeners of this show, to come up with an outstanding, appropriate, representing team name for the expansion IFL Indy team. Again, up in Fishers, the new Fishers Events Center will be the location. Now, if you're looking for information about the Indoor Football League, or this team, I should say, the Indy IndoorFootball.com is where you go. I think we need to come up with a team name. You guys good at coming up with a team name? That announcement was made today. So get cracking on that team name. Hey, Jeff, I dig the Racers, but we've got to go big on this. Search all areas of your ample brain here. Everybody, come up with something good, really good. Man, nicknames are so hard to come by anymore. Got so many names have been gone over. What's the name of your fantasy? Oh, I shouldn't even bring up my fantasy team. I'm an absolute mess. I'm the worst general manager in the league, I think.
I finally lost for the first time.
I haven't even looked at mine yet. I don't want to know. What's your team name?
The Lowly Producers.
The Lowly Producers. Yes. I am My Glistening Wood Finish. I have no idea, other than the wood being in there, obviously. And the my team logo is some woman in the 70s holding a can of Pledge. My Glistening Wood Finish. All right, I'm going to leave it up to you to come up with a team name right here, if you don't mind. Where is the Fishers Event Center going? Is it going to be up in the middle of absolutely everything? I'm assuming, right, where Fishers is? And everything. So that was announced a little bit earlier today. And I just got this. Actually, I got this via Twitter from Todd Zimmerman. Welcome, Indy, or check that. Yeah, welcome at Indoor FL to Fishers. 18th franchise will call Fishers home. It takes bold vision to push forward and create dynamic opportunities for residents and visitors to be proud in our community. Thank you all who believe in the vision. So I think Bargersville is going to get something like this, 2050, something like that. It'll spread to the south side. Congratulations to those that got that going. Oh, the corn dogs. Going to have some good stuff, good response at some point. Again, good show today. I want to thank everybody for being involved inside the Winschuler Spreadable Cheeses Lounge. Original, sharp, bacon and cheddar. Everybody loves the pepper jack. Does have a little wang in it for you. Winschulers.com, locations, Meijer and Kroger. Although people are talking about how the Kroger locations, and one of these days, I mention you guys so much, somebody around here that's local, would you get Kroger as a part of the show? For the love of God. Seriously. I mean, how much more do I mention you? People down the hall are going to tell me to shut up about you. Yeah, two things. All right, get on the show, get on the station. Actually, more than two, three. And then make sure you've got the world's most spreadable cheese that has become famous, enormously famous here in central Indiana. Yeah, and make sure you got those tubs and their availability at your local locations here, your local Krogers. And plural Krogers and not Krogers. Meijer locations as well. Apparently, Meijer is the place to go to find it. Oh, I know the Fisher's spreadability right there. Fisher's spreadability gets me interested. I like that. Yeah, thank you, Mark D. Near IKEA. There's zero going on up in there, so I'd be okay. You got a lot of stuff happening. Near IKEA for the new Fisher's Event Center. Fisher's is happening, everybody, for real. Greg Rakestraw, Brad Spielberger, Jeremiah Johnson, Nate Atkins on the show a little bit earlier today. Hey, another Game 7 NLCS, last night ALCS, and I know that it was over early. Basically, in the fourth inning, it was done. Rangers went strong. Astros at home went home. I can't remember a time when nobody won a home game. That's incredible. I cannot remember a time. I thought that was a great series. And I got to know the Rangers a little bit more. I mean, obviously, Corey Seager, knew of him. You knew that made that deal for Max Scherzer, but he absolutely didn't even play a role. Guys like Jordan Montgomery, Nathaniel Lowe. This is a good storyline. Good series. You got a Game 7 in the National League tonight. In progress at 9 o'clock right here on the Fan. Follows Trackside this evening. And you got the Phillies hosting the Diamondbacks. Winner goes to the World Series. And I know that was brought up to me a little bit earlier. Numbers, I don't even care. I just want it to be a compelling 7-game World Series. That's what I want. JMV, did you send out a little bit earlier a 1990 video of Glenn Bragg's at bat where he broke the bat on a strikeout? Yeah, and it wasn't an angry breaking of the bat during a strikeout. It was the swing and the bat, actually, he went through the pitch. I can't remember. It may have been Dave Stewart. I think it was Dave Stewart on the mound for the A's. So Glenn Braggs, who's been on this show before, swung through it, and when the bat hit his shoulder and back area, it broke in half. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. It may have been the greatest strikeout of all time. If you missed that, at JMV 1070, it is spectacular video, and you get the late Jack Buck and Tim McCarver breaking it down for you. It is fairly outstanding right there. So, Anthony just sent me this. My son MJ played at LN and then Villanova, plays for the Green Bay Blizzard in the IFL. Still trying to get into the XFL and dreams of the NFL. It'd be great to come home. So, shout out to MJ right there. MJ plays in the IFL for Green Bay. And again, as I mentioned, Indy getting a team that's going to be stationed up at the Fisher's Event Center in Fishers. Quick break, we'll come back. Somebody's going to win 50-50 in betting and dining. Courtesy of Harris Hoosier Park Racing and Casino in Anderson. And yes, you're right. Glenn Braggs was married. We talked about that too. One of the lovelies of En Vogue. Glenn Braggs had a pretty outstanding gig. Great conversation years ago too. 50-50 betting and dining, Harris Hoosier Park Race of the Day, Tuesday through Friday. We do it right here. 4 days out of the 5 every week, and we're going to be up there coming up tomorrow. But the Harris Hoosier Park Race of the Day will get a winner next.
Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
It's party time! P-A-R-T. Why? Because I gotta!
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
A busy show today. You guys have been fantastic. Inside the Windschuler Spreadable Cheeses Lounge, where evidently Gregory says at his Kroger, Angela Buckman and Pat Carlini shop. I can't find it there, JMV. I am going to Meijer tomorrow. People tell me that Meijer is the location to find the ultimate in spreadability. Windschuler Spreadable Cheeses. Michael Florence. Shout out to Michael Florence, the winner today. The winning horse, Gamblin' Mo, paid $5.20 on a $2 bet. The $2 exacta went for $20. The 50-cent trifecta was $13.20. That's your Harrah's Hoosier Park race of the day. 50-50 in betting and dining to Michael Florence. And me going to be up there coming up tomorrow. So give that a try. Love to see you up there tomorrow. Race of the day, Tuesday through Friday right here. In fact, racing continues through the first couple of weeks of the month of December at Harrah's Hoosier Park Racing and Casino. That's in Anderson. Man, I'm going to be all over the map this week, too. Anderson tomorrow, Harrah's Hoosier Park Racing and Casino. If you guys want to come by, on my way, I'm going to stop at Ford's Garage. And they're doing at the Star. Dana Benbow is doing a story on, the burger names up there and those that have burgers, I being one. And we'll do that coming up tomorrow. If you guys want to stop about noon or so, we'll see you up there. And then I'm going to head up to Anderson, Harrah's Hoosier Park, and do a show up there tomorrow. Big day tomorrow as well, because the Pacers open up the NBA campaign against the Wizards at home. Jeremiah Johnson, we had a fantastic conversation about expectations, rotations, and me especially, because I'm out here on a limb. 45 is pretty large, considering this team won 35. I think the high water mark I've seen is me. Like everybody else is kind of going in and around 42, 41. I know it's only 3 games here or there, but it's a lot of games, and that is why it is so incredibly important for this team. And I know it's going to be hard. You got new faces, everybody acclimating to one another. But you need to get off to a good start. And this year is just going to be different. Last year it was no expectations. We'll see what we have. And then by December, everybody was talking about, what are you going to do at the trade deadline? Are they going to be buyers or sellers? And you got something going on, as JJ mentioned. At one point, toward the midway part of the season, they were a 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. And, of course, lost games, fell by the wayside, got injured. Didn't turn out that way. They ended up on the outside looking in of the postseason. But, now, even though they're not saying much still about how much more they're going to win, I think the fans, you can feel a level of excitement around here that has not been felt in a while. As I talk about, too, I thought they handled it perfectly a year ago. You undersell it and you over-deliver, and even making or not making, in this case, the postseason, they did deliver for you a level of excitement that you did not see coming. And maybe this does kind of push it forward a little bit, our level of expectations, but man, there's nothing wrong with that. As I talk about all the time, you grow and you learn, you mature, and you do that together. And if you can mix in winning, then by all means do it. It's been few and far between around here. So I mentioned the first segment of the day. It kind of seems like we're all a little bit stuck in the rut, and I'm trying to get us out of here in terms of expectations. Everybody thinks, well, you got to lose to be good one of these days again. I'm all for winning, maturing at the same time, and doing things that nobody stinking expected. That's what you need. That is what I've talked about today, the renaissance, if you will, a rebirth. I just think a lot of people need to recalibrate their thinking. Everybody just goes in, schleprockish is, another bad year. I don't know about this. I have heaps of expectations on this Pacer team, and I'll stand by it. Yeah, hopefully they can live up to it. They live up to it, and there's going to be some excitement in there. And again, I'm not expecting greatness out of the gate. Just take advantage of a lot of home games on that schedule early. And then you can talk about how helpful that was if you're still winning on the back end of this schedule coming up in late March and early April. That certainly for me is the hope. Jeremiah Johnson and I talked about that, the roster, the breakdown and everything else a little bit earlier. Podcast 1075thefan.com. Of course, we have the game coming up tomorrow. So 6:30 pregame coverage, right? So that means I'll probably do some Anything Goes live from Harrah's Hoosier Park Racing and Casino in Anderson. Mm-hmm. All right, then. So some Anything Goes returns coming up tomorrow. Honestly, you guys love it. Yes, James?
So it may not be as long because there is the Colts daily update.
Yes.
So we might not be going till 6:30. It might only be till like 6:10 or something like that.
And that's probably better for Anything Goes. Yeah. I think the shorter the better, normally. The shorter the better. For Anything Goes coming up in the 6 o'clock hour. That's tomorrow. Harrah's Hoosier Park Racing and Casino in Anderson. Coming up on Thursday, our Larceny Bourbon Locks and Luna Azul Tequila Shots. I've not been or done a show from Kip's Pub. Anybody got any background on it? Please do not hesitate to share that. Kip's Pub, North Side on Thursday. That's Larceny Bourbon Locks, Luna Azul Tequila Shots. Friday, we've been here, and I love the back nine. Shout out to Danny Hayes of Roncalli. Back nine coming up on Friday. That's a Bud Light Blue Friday. And if you don't have tickets to the game on Sunday, the Saints and the Colts, you can win them with us coming up on Friday. And then Horseshoe, Indy, and Shelbyville on Saturday. And I'm looking up there. I don't see it up there yet, do we? See it up there. I want to say it's 11 until 1. However, what time's the IU game here? Oh, the IU game's downstairs. It's on IBC. What the hell am I talking about? I think it's 11 to 1 on Saturday. Jake Query and I are going to do it. It is going to be outstanding. Good conversation. You guys can all join us down in Shelbyville. Actually, Fairland, Indiana, coming up on Saturday afternoon. Oh, JMV Takeover Halloween Party, B1057, coming up on Saturday night, featuring the voice of the legendary Sammy Terry. James, great job out of you today. Thank you very much. More Bullseye passes tomorrow. Greg Rakestraw, Brad Spielberger, Jeremiah Johnson, and Nate Atkins. Podcast 1075thefan.com. Live in Anderson tomorrow. Harrah's Hoosier Park Racing and Casino on a big afternoon there. We'll make a stop at Ford's Garage at noon, too, if you want to join me as well. 93.5